Rain hammered the highway as I pulled my 18-wheeler beneath a deserted overpass. While checking the rear tires, I spotted a homeless woman curled beside a concrete pillar. Then my headlights caught the red pendant around her neck. My breath stopped. It looked exactly like the necklace I had given my daughter 2 months before she vanished 18 years ago. "Where did you get that?" I asked. She remained silent. I brought her somewhere safe, but when the doctor examined her shoulder hours later, what appeared beneath her torn shirt sent a chill through my entire body. This story unfolds slowly, but it won't leave you the same. Before we continue, drop a comment and tell me, how are you feeling right now in just one word? Your presence here means something. A quick note. Some details are fictionalized to strengthen the message, but the heart of this story, the lesson about trust and betrayal, is what I hope resonates with you. At 63, I still drive my 18-wheeler at least once a week. Not because Perry Freight needs me behind the wheel, but because the truck cabin is the only place no one expects me to be anyone else. The windshield wipers scraped against November drizzle, the rhythm almost musical if you didn't listen too hard. I-5 South cut through Seattle's southern suburbs at 6:47 p.m. on a Wednesday. The kind of gray evening where headlights turn on early and the sky never quite commits to darkness. An old country song played on the radio, something about lost highways and women who leave, and I didn't turn it off because silence in the truck was different from silence at home. One was empty, the other was waiting. I'd been driving routes like this for 30 years, built Perry Freight from one truck in 1994, the year my first wife died, into 38 vehicles and a Portland depot that handled federal contracts. At 63, I should have been retired playing golf, doing whatever men my age do when they stop working. Instead, I was here hands at 10 and 2 watching white lines disappear under my hood, because this was the only honest thing left in my life. 18 years is long enough that people stop asking, not long enough that I stop answering questions no one asks anymore. My daughter Romilly disappeared on Highway 138 on November 15, 2006. 18 years old, driving to Roseburg for a weekend trip, and she never arrived. Douglas County Sheriff found her car in a ravine 3 days later. They found her backpack, her phone, her jacket. They didn't find her. The medical examiner, a woman named Laverne Riddle, who I'd later learn had very specific reasons for her conclusions, declared her dead based on evidence I never fully understood. I signed papers. I buried an empty casket. I married my second wife, Linnea, 14 months later, because grief makes you do things that look like healing, but aren't. That was 18 years ago, the night that broke me in ways I still don't fully name. I thought about turning the radio off. I didn't. The song ended and another began, something about truck stops and regret, and I let it play because at least it was noise that didn't expect anything from me. The thing about grief is it teaches you to notice things, small things, things that don't add up. 5 years ago, the financial reports started looking wrong. Not dramatically wrong, just wrong enough that someone who'd built Perry Freight from one truck in 1994 would notice what someone skimming numbers wouldn't. Lloyd Ashford. My family attorney had been handling estate planning since Romilly disappeared. Good man, I'd thought. Steady. The kind of lawyer who returns calls within an hour and knows Oregon probate law the way I know Highway 26. Except Lloyd's Range Rover had been parked outside my Clackamas house more nights than any family lawyer's vehicle should be. I counted. I'm good at counting. 37 nights over 6 months in 2019. Always late evening, always when I was supposedly on delivery runs. I didn't confront Linnea. I watched. Linnea had cared for my first wife during the final months of her illness with such devotion that marrying her felt like honoring something my first wife would have wanted. She was patient. She was kind. She understood that I needed time. 14 months after the funeral, she was my wife. 14 months after that, Romilly was gone. I couldn't remember the last time Linnea's devotion didn't feel like a performance I was supposed to applaud. So, in 2019, without telling her, I established the Perry Legacy Trust. Moved the house and the freight land, the core assets, into an irrevocable trust with paperwork Lloyd never saw. Because I used a Seattle attorney Linnea had never met. If something happened to me, if the numbers kept looking wrong, at least the foundation would be protected. 5 years of watching. 5 years of pretending I didn't notice. 5 years of driving my truck instead of going home, because home had become a place where I counted my wife's lies the way other men count sheep. How long does it take to stop trusting someone who saved you once longer than you'd think, shorter than it should? The I-5 stretched ahead taillights blurring through rain-streaked glass. My hands knew this route. Portland was 90 minutes south. The house would be dark when I arrived. Linnea would be in the study, paperwork spread across the desk, waiting for me to sign something. She was always waiting for me to sign something. Tonight I was driving not just to escape grief, but to avoid going home to people I no longer trusted. The I-90 interchange appeared ahead, green highway sign, reflecting in my headlights. Normally I'd stay on, I-5 South straight shot to Portland, no thinking required. My hands knew the route so well, I could drive it sleeping. But something made me look at that exit, something I couldn't name. Not instinct, not reason, something older and quieter than both. My turn signal clicked on before I decided to move it. My foot eased off the gas before my brain registered the choice. The truck began to drift right toward the exit ramp, and I let it. If you've ever driven a route so many times, your hands know it better than your brain. You know what I mean? When I say the truck made the choice before I did. The exit curved down toward the I-90, bridge underpass, dark concrete pillars, abandoned transfer station, the kind of Seattle geography you drive past without seeing. Because it's been invisible so long, it's part of the infrastructure. Sodium lights cast everything orange and hollow. The smell of wet asphalt and diesel fuel filled the cab. When I cracked the window, cold November air, carrying the scent of Puget Sound 3 miles west. I should have kept going. I should have stayed on. I-5 South gone home to Portland, signed whatever papers Linnea had. Waiting on my desk, pretended for another night that I didn't know what I knew. Instead, my foot touched the brake and the truck began to slow. I don't know why I took that exit. I still don't. Later I'd try to call it instinct, but instinct is too clean a word for what it was. More like the truck knew something I didn't, and I was just holding the wheel. The bridge underpass opened ahead like a mouth. Dark. Waiting. And everything that happened next started with that one unexplained exit. I stopped the truck under the I-90 bridge because the rear tire pressure light had been on since Tacoma, and checking tires is what you do when instinct matters more than convenience. The underpass swallowed the headlights' concrete pillars, rising like ribbed sodium lights, casting everything sickly orange. The air smelled like wet asphalt and Seattle November dampness, cold water that never quite freezes. I killed the engine and climbed down, boots hitting puddled concrete. The rear tire looked fine, probably just a sensor glitch. But I walked the truck's length anyway because that's what you do. Check what can be checked. The headlights caught her when I walked past the cab. Just a shape at first, someone who'd found shelter under the bridge the way people do when winter starts biting. Tattered blanket, 2 garbage bags hunched against a pillar in the posture of someone who never quite sleeps even when their eyes are closed. I would have kept walking, would have finished the check, climb back in, driven to Portland. Then the light hit her neck. The necklace caught the headlights like a small red fire. Garnet teardrop pendant, silver setting with a distinctive engraved border running along the edge. Interlocking crescents, deliberate and specific, because I'd wanted something my 18-year-old daughter couldn't lose and pretend she'd misplaced. I'd given it to Romilly on her birthday, September 2006, 2 months before she disappeared. 2 months before the sheriff called to say they'd found her car in a ravine and her body was presumed dead. There aren't 2 necklaces like that in the world. I'd sat with the Portland jeweler long enough to be certain. I'd specified the engraved border myself, a pattern no one else would commission. By accident, no one else would replicate without the original. And the original had been buried in an empty casket 18 years ago. My legs moved without consulting my brain. I walked toward her, slowly, hands visible. She lifted her head, wary, exhausted, watchful. The look of someone who'd learned to calculate threat before full consciousness. I stopped 6 feet away, crouched down, pulled a water bottle from my jacket and set it on the concrete between us. "You okay?" She stared at the water, then at me. Didn't move to take it. Smart. But my eyes went back to the necklace. Red garnet catching light, engraved border unmistakable. "At that necklace," I said. My voice came out different than I intended. Not calm, not controlled. "Where did you get it?" She pulled the blanket tighter, hand covering the pendant. Protection reflex. I sat completely on the damp concrete, eye to eye, not towering. The cold seeped through my jeans immediately. "I'm not going to take it," I said. "I just need to know where it came from." She studied me. I could see her face clearly now, mid-30s, maybe weathered from years outside. A large scar ran from her left temple down across her cheekbone, old but prominent, the kind that changes the architecture of a face. The scar hadn't been on my daughter's face. I didn't recognize her. Not her eyes, not her jawline, not the way she held herself. Nothing about this woman connected to the 18-year-old girl I'd buried, except the necklace. "Do you know the name Romilly Perry?" She looked at me with the specific emptiness of someone who doesn't recognize words that should mean something. No flash of recognition, no fear, just blank watchfulness. How do you explain standing under a bridge in Seattle staring at something that shouldn't exist? You don't. You just stand there until the impossible becomes the only thing that makes sense. Two facts existed simultaneously. This was the necklace I'd commissioned for my daughter. This was not my daughter's face. I don't know what kept me sitting on that wet concrete. Not logic, not reason. Something older than both. The same thing that had made me take the I-90 exit without deciding to. Instinct. "I have a truck," I said. "Food, warmth, you can sleep, just for tonight. No strings." She watched me for what felt like a full minute, calculating threat versus cold versus hunger. The math of survival. Finally, she nodded once. I stood, slowly offered my hand. She ignored it, pushed herself up, using the pillar, gathering her bags with careful efficiency. I led her to the passenger side, helped her climb up. Gave her the water bottle and a blanket from the sleeper compartment. She drank slowly, hands shaking. Within 5 minutes, her eyes were closing. Within 10, she was asleep. Blanket pulled to her chin, bags clutched to her chest. I sat in the driver's seat and picked up my phone. My finger hovered over Linnea's name in contacts. Then I saw Lloyd's Range Rover in my mind parked outside my house on 37 nights I'd counted. Saw Linnea's patient smile that felt like performance. Saw 5 years of financial reports that didn't add up. I put the phone down, picked it up again. Scrolled to Theodore Madden. Private investigator, retired Seattle PD friend for 30 years. The kind of man who answered when you called and didn't ask questions until you were ready. He picked up on the second ring. "Theodore," I said, "I need you. Don't ask why yet. Can you bring Dr. Callahan if she's available? I'll be at the Clackamas cabin in 3 hours. Silence. Then, "I'll be there." I hung up and started the engine. The woman didn't stir. That cabin, I'd never mentioned it to Linnea. Not because I was hiding it deliberately. When I bought it in 1998, I just thought it was a place to be alone when needed. Registered under a subsidiary, my name nowhere on the deed. Now, I wasn't sure I hadn't known all along I'd need it someday. I drove south on I-5 with a woman I didn't recognize wearing a necklace that belonged to my daughter, heading toward a cabin my wife didn't know about, while Theodore prepared to drive through the night without knowing why. The necklace was impossible. The scar was real. And somewhere between those two facts was a truth I wasn't ready to name yet. Theodore Madden's truck pulled into the cabin, clearing at 10:45 p.m. headlights, cutting through Oregon darkness. And I watched from the window as my friend of 30 years climbed out carrying the kind of questions he'd agreed not to ask yet. The cabin sat on 40 acres of Clackamas County forest I'd bought in 1998, back when land was cheap and solitude felt like luxury instead of necessity. One room, wood stove, 2 windows, a couch I'd salvaged from the depot. The woman was still asleep on that couch when Theodore knocked 3 sharp raps that meant he was here, he was ready, and he'd wait as long as it took. I opened the door. Theodore stood there, 67 broad-shouldered gray hair, cropped military short, even 3 years after retiring from Oregon State Police. Behind him, Dr. Imogene Callahan carried her medical bag, the one she still kept stocked 2 years after leaving Portland ER work. Her eyes went past me to the couch, taking in the scene with the kind of professional assessment that doesn't waste time on surprise. "Theodore," I said. "Raymond." He stepped inside, and Dr. Callahan followed. Neither asked questions. That's what 30 years of friendship bought you, the ability to show up at midnight in the woods without demanding explanations. Theodore's eyes went to the woman on the couch, to the red garnet necklace visible against her throat, then to my face. I watched him read everything I wasn't saying. "You want me to ask," he said quietly, "or you want me to wait?" "Wait." Dr. Callahan set her medical bag on the cabin's small wooden table. "I'll need to examine her," she said. "Check for injuries, malnutrition, exposure. Is that acceptable?" "Yes." She moved to the couch with practiced efficiency, kneeling beside the woman who still slept with the kind of exhaustion that goes deeper than ordinary tiredness. Dr. Callahan checked pulse pupils, examined the visible bruising on her hands, lifted the blanket slightly to assess her general condition. "Dehydrated," she said. "Undernourished. Several old injuries poorly healed." She looked at the woman's right shoulder where the blanket had slipped. "This shoulder wound is infected, but not critically. I need to clean it properly." She produced medical scissors from her bag. The sound they made cutting through the tattered shirt was sharp in the cabin's silence fabric, parting, revealing skin that hadn't seen proper care in years. I stood in the corner because I didn't trust myself to stand closer. Theodore's hand was on the wall beside me, not touching me, just there. The woman stirred slightly but didn't wake. Dr. Callahan worked with the focus of someone who'd spent decades in emergency rooms, someone who knew how to treat the body in front of her without getting distracted by the story behind it. She cut away more fabric, exposing the right shoulder completely to access the infected wound. And that's when I saw it. The birthmark appeared first small star-shaped just below the shoulder blade. Natural, unmistakable. The same mark I'd kissed when Romilly was 3 years old and scraped her shoulder falling off her bike. The same mark her mother had called her little constellation when she was a baby. You think you know what hope feels like until you've spent 18 years without it. Then it comes back and you realize you'd forgotten how much it hurts. But it was the tattoo that stopped my breathing. Over the birthmark faded aged but unmistakable a small rose, no bigger than a quarter, black ink that had softened to gray over 18 years. Simple, delicate, the tiny rebellious rose she'd gotten at 18 with money from her first paycheck at Perry Freight. I'd yelled at her for a week, told her she'd ruined something permanent for something temporary. Said things a father says when his daughter makes choices, he doesn't understand things I'd never get to apologize for, because 2 months later, she was gone. No one in the world knew about that tattoo, except the people who'd lived in our house. Her mother had been dead a year when Romilly got it. Linnea wouldn't have known she didn't marry me until after Romilly disappeared. The tattoo artist in Portland who'd done the work had retired and moved to Arizona in 2010. There was no way for this woman to have that specific tattoo over that specific birthmark unless she was my daughter. "Raymond," Theodore's voice came from very far away. Dr. Callahan had stopped working. She was looking at me. My legs stopped supporting me. Not a dramatic collapse, just a body that couldn't hold the weight of what it was seeing. I put my hand on the floor. The wood was cold, solid, real, more real than what I was looking at. I lowered myself down, sat on the cabin floor with my back against the wall. Theodore came and stood next to where I'd gone down. He didn't crouch, didn't put a hand on my shoulder, just stood there. There are moments when the only thing you can do for someone is stand in the same room while they fall apart. Dr. Callahan went back to treating the shoulder wound with professional focus, giving me space to break it without audience. No one spoke for a long time. Grief is a room you learn to live in. The furniture becomes familiar. The walls stop pressing. And then someone opens a door you didn't know existed, and the whole architecture collapses. I'd buried my daughter 18 years ago. Signed papers. Watched them lower an empty casket. Married another woman because the grief was too big to carry alone. Built a life around the hole she'd left. And she'd been alive the entire time. "How long have you known?" Theodore asked quietly. 3 hours, I said. "I found her under the I-90 bridge in Seattle. She was wearing the necklace. Does she know who she is?" "No." Dr. Callahan finished bandaging the shoulder and gently pulled the blanket back over the woman over Romilly. My daughter. Who had no idea she was my daughter. The scar on her temple, Dr. Callahan said carefully. Traumatic injury. Old. The kind that causes memory loss if it's severe enough. "Can it come back?" I asked. "Memory. Sometimes. With time, with triggers." She looked at me with something like compassion. "Sometimes not." I sat on that cabin floor and looked at the faded rose on my daughter's shoulder, and I understood 2 things. Simultaneously, she was alive and she had no idea who she was. The necklace had been impossible. The tattoo made it undeniable. And somewhere between finding her under that bridge and this moment, I'd stopped being a man who'd lost his daughter and became a man who had to figure out how to bring her back from wherever she'd been for 18 years. I made chicken soup Thursday morning because it was the only thing I could think to do with my hands, and doing nothing would have meant thinking about what the tattoo meant, and I wasn't ready for that conversation with myself yet. The cabin kitchen was small, 2 burners, a dented pot. Theodore had brought with groceries at dawn. I chopped carrots, peeled potatoes, added stock from a can. let it simmer until the cabin smelled like something other than pine and 18 years of questions. When it was ready, I ladled soup into a bowl and set it on the dining table, pulled out a chair. Romilly appeared in the bedroom doorway, wearing clothes Dr. Callahan had brought sweatpants, oversized flannel shirt. Her hair was tangled, a temple scar visible in morning light. I gestured to the chair without speaking. She sat slowly, eyes going to the soup bowl. Steam rose in lazy spirals. Then her hand moved, just the little finger, reached out, dipped into the soup at the bowl's edge, stirred 3 slow circles clockwise, then lifted the spoon. I turned toward the kitchen window before she could see my face, stood there looking at Oregon pines until I could breathe normally. Her mother had taught her that, when she was 5, little finger first 3 circles to test temperature, because a child's little finger is more sensitive to heat than the index finger. Keeps you from burning your mouth on soup you're too hungry to wait for. I'd watched my first wife teach Romilly that exact motion in 1993. Watched her repeat it for 13 years until she disappeared. Romilly didn't remember her mother, didn't remember being 5, didn't remember the lesson, but her little finger remembered. Dr. Callahan had explained it the night before. Autobiographical memory can be lost completely from trauma. Names, faces, personal history gone. But procedural memory works differently, different brain structures. The body holds what the mind can't. I hadn't fully understood the science, but I understood my daughter's little finger, and I started wondering how many other things were buried in her body waiting to be called out. She finished the soup without looking at me. When she was done, she walked back to the bedroom like she'd always known where it was. It doesn't feel like regular hope. It feels like watching a ghost become solid, one movement at a time. Friday came and went, quiet, watchful. More soup, same little finger ritual. I didn't mention it, just watched and wrote notes in the small notebook I'd carried for 5 years. Saturday afternoon, I drove to Clackamas Grocery and bought supplies, toiletries, clean towels, fabric softener because the towels smelled musty. I grabbed the cheap lavender brand without thinking the same one Linnea used, because she said expensive ones gave her headaches. Habit shopping. Back at the cabin, I washed the towels in the ancient rattling machine, hung them on the porch railing. The lavender scent drifted through the open bedroom window, where Romilly sat looking at the forest. When the scent hit, she went rigid. Not gradually, like someone had cut a wire. I was folding clothes when I heard her breathing change. Walked to the bedroom doorway. She sat on the bed edge, hands clutching her head. "And this scent," she said. First word since I'd found her. Voice rough from days of silence. I waited. Her eyes weren't focused on the cabin. They were somewhere else, sometime else. "The woman in white," she said slowly. She put this on her hands before she went into Mom's room. I saw it through the crack in the door. My heart stopped. Mom didn't want her in there, but she came in anyway. Romilly's voice was flat, detached. She smoothed the sheets, touched Mom's arm. The lavender was on her hands. I could smell it from the hallway. The fragment ended abruptly. Romilly blinked, looked around the bedroom like she'd just woken. Didn't seem to remember what she'd said. I took the notebook from my jacket pocket, wrote down every word. Woman in white, lavender on hands, mother's room, crack in door. Mom didn't want her there. Linnea had used lavender fabric softener for 14 years. I'd never asked why. I stood on the cabin porch while Romilly slept and called Theodore. "I need you to find someone," I said. "A nurse who worked with Linnea at the Portland clinic 18 years ago. Someone who might remember unusual prescription requests." "What am I looking for?" Theodore asked. "A digoxin," I said. "Heart medication. The kind that kills you if the dosage is wrong." Silence. Then, "How do you know?" "I don't," I said. "But my daughter saw something through a door crack 18 years ago. And I'm starting to understand that my first wife didn't die of heart disease." I wrote down every word Romilly had said about the woman in white and the lavender and the crack in the door. Then I stood on the cabin porch and looked at the forest while she slept inside, and I understood something I'd been avoiding since I found her under that bridge. The fragments were starting to move toward each other, now not enough to form a complete picture, but enough for me to understand that my first wife hadn't died of spontaneous heart disease, and my daughter had seen who killed her, and someone had made very sure she couldn't tell anyone what she knew. Romilly hadn't just disappeared on Highway 138 in 2006. She'd been disappeared, removed, made to forget. And whoever did it had calculated wrong. They'd assumed memory was a single thing you could destroy. They hadn't counted on the body keeping score. By Tuesday night, Theodore would bring something from the Portland mansion that would prove just how much the body remembered. But that Saturday evening, standing on the cabin porch with my daughter's first recovered memory written in a notebook, I made myself a promise I was going to find every single fragment. I was going to put them back together. And I was going to make whoever took her pay for every year she'd been gone. Theodore arrived at the cabin Tuesday night, carrying an oak music box I hadn't seen in 18 years. And the moment I recognized it through the window, I knew whatever came next would hurt in ways the necklace and tattoo hadn't prepared me for. He placed it on the table like evidence, which it was. I went to the mansion this afternoon while Linnea was at her book club, Theodore said. This was the only thing I took. She won't notice it's gone. It's been in the back of her closet for years. The box sat in the firelight, walnut wood, polished soft brass hinges tarnished. My first wife had kept it on her bedroom dresser, jewelry, private things. Romilly sat on the couch watching it with focused stillness. I lifted the lid slowly. The melody of Fur Elise filled the cabin, tinkling delicate, the wind-up mechanism playing the song my wife had loved. She'd played it every night before bed, usually when she thought no one was watching. Romilly's eyes were half closed, listening. Then her hand moved. Not consciously, just moved. Her fingers found the edge where red velvet lining met wood. Her fingernail pressed a specific point, not searching, just knowing exactly where. The compartment clicked open beneath the false bottom. Automatic. Her hands remembered what her mind had forgotten, the secret place where her mother hid important things. Theodore leaned forward. I held my breath. The hidden space opened. Empty. Romilly stared into it like she was seeing something we couldn't. The music box continued playing. The letter was here, she said quietly. Mom put it here before she couldn't anymore. I waited. She told me to read it. She was in the hospital bed, so weak. She grabbed my hand and said, "You must read this. Be careful with that woman." Theodore and I exchanged a glance. There's a specific kind of cruelty in watching someone's hands remember opening a box that once held their mother's warning, a warning that got them killed because they followed it. The letter said Linnea was requesting the wrong medications, Romilly continued. Said she was doing things that didn't make sense. Mom was scared. She wrote it all down because she knew something was wrong. What did the letter tell you to do? I asked. It said if anything happened to her, I should go to Lloyd Ashford. He was her friend. They went to law school together. She said he was the only one who'd believe me, the only one I could trust. I watched my daughter remember being 18 and terrified, and following instructions that got her killed. So I went to his office, Romilly said. With the letter, 2 days after the funeral. I was scared, but I thought Mom told me to trust him. What happened? Theodore asked. Lloyd read the letter, took his time. Then he looked up and nodded. Very serious. He said, I'll take care of this. Your mother was right to trust me. The music box wound down Fur Elise, slowing to a stop. Then he picked up the phone, Romilly said. Made a call right there. I sat in the chair across from his desk and listened. I thought lawyers did that. Called people, fixed things. Who did he call? I asked, though I already knew. He was calling her, Romilly said. He was calling Linnea while I sat there holding the letter that proved she killed my mother. And I just sat there. The cabin went silent except for the fire. He didn't leave the room, Romilly continued. Didn't lower his voice. He said, we have a situation. The daughter has documentation. Then he listened. Then he said, I'll handle it. Give me 72 hours. How do you explain to your 18-year-old self that the person your dying mother told you to trust was the one who would try to kill you? When did you go to Roseburg? Theodore asked. That weekend, Lloyd said I should get away, clear my head. He'd take care of everything. He even suggested the route, Highway 138, said it was peaceful. And the truck that hit you? Unmarked, Romilly said. Dark. I remember it in the rearview mirror. Too close. Then the impact. Then the trees. Then nothing for a long time. I sat there understanding with perfect clarity what had happened. My daughter did everything her dying mother told her to do. She read the letter. She went to the trusted family friend. She sat in Lloyd Ashford's office and watched him make a phone call she thought was normal. And that phone call made in front of her with her sitting right there in the chair opposite his desk was the call that sent her car off Highway 138 into the trees. She'd done exactly what a good daughter should do, and it almost killed her. The letter's gone, Theodore said, looking at the empty compartment. Someone took it. Linnea, I said. After Romilly disappeared, she would have searched everything, found it, Destroyed it. Romilly closed the music box compartment with a soft click. Her hands knew how to seal it just as well as they knew how to open it. I trusted him, she said quietly. Mom said to trust him, and I did. I looked at Theodore. Find out what happened to the accident file, Highway 138, November 2006. I want to know who investigated it and who closed it and why. Theodore nodded. I'll drive to Douglas County Records tomorrow. But I already knew what he'd find. 72 hours. That's what Lloyd had said on the phone. Give me 72 hours. That's exactly how long it takes to clean up evidence and close a file. My daughter had trusted the person her mother told her to trust. And that trust had nearly killed her. Now I understood why she'd spent 18 years with no memory of who she was. Some part of her brain had decided that forgetting was the only way to survive what Lloyd Ashford and Linnea had done. But the body keeps score, and now the memories were coming back. And when they were all back, I was going to make sure Lloyd and Linnea paid for every single year my daughter spent lost. Theodore made coffee. Wednesday morning, the way former cops make coffee strong enough to strip paint. And when he handed me the cup on the cabin porch, I could tell from his face that whatever he'd kept quiet for 18 years was about to stop being quiet. Oregon fog moved through the pine trees like smoke. 7:30 a.m. Romilly was still asleep inside. Theodore and I stood on the porch watching November gray settle into the valley. I need to tell you something, Theodore said. Something I should have told you 18 years ago. I sipped the coffee, waited. I never believed it was suicide, Ray. Not from the first morning I drove out to that cliff on Highway 138. The coffee burned going down. The angle was wrong, Theodore continued. Car went over at 47 miles per hour based on impact trajectory. You don't kill yourself at 47, you either floor it or you're forced off by something else. I set the coffee cup on the porch railing very carefully. There were skid marks from a second vehicle, Theodore said. Fresh, parallel to Romilly's car for about 30 feet, then veering away right before the cliff edge. I photographed them, put them in my initial report. What happened to the report? My voice came out flat. Sheriff Harlan Riddle closed the file 72 hours later, marked it suicide due to depression, never explained the skid marks, never followed up on the second vehicle, never requested forensic analysis. I looked at Theodore. 30 years of friendship, 30 years of trust. Why didn't you tell me? Because I tried, Theodore said quietly. I reported the discrepancies to state police, got told to focus on my regular caseload. Someone made calls, someone with enough reach that when a state trooper tells you to drop it, it doesn't feel like a suggestion. It feels like a threat. He took a long drink of his own coffee. A standard investigation takes 2 weeks minimum, scene reconstruction, witness interviews, forensic analysis. This one closed in 3 days. It wasn't rushed. It was buried. I stood there absorbing what he was telling me. My daughter hadn't driven off a cliff in grief. She'd been run off, and someone with authority had made sure no one investigated it properly. I've carried this 18 years, Theodore said. Every time I saw you at a diner or that memorial service, I thought about those skid marks. I thought about the phone call I got from state police telling me to let it go, and I waited. Waited for what? For proof strong enough that they couldn't bury it again. There's a particular weight to learning that someone you trusted for 30 years has been carrying evidence of your daughter's murder in silence, not because they didn't care, but because they were waiting for the right moment when the truth couldn't be buried again. The music box gave us that, Theodore said. Romilly's memory of Lloyd making the call, the 72-hour timeline matching Riddle's file closure. Now we have motive, method, and timeline. Now we can move. What's the move? I'm driving to Roseburg tomorrow, Theodore said. Douglas County Records. The accident file still exists. They can't destroy county records without audit trails. I want to see what's left and what's missing. I'll come with you? No, Theodore's voice was firm. You stay with Romilly. Some investigations work better when one person goes alone. Less attention, less questions. Thursday morning, Theodore left at 6 a.m. I made coffee and watched Oregon fog settle through the pines and thought about skid marks photographed 18 years ago that someone had wanted erased. Theodore called at 11:30. His voice had the specific flatness of someone looking at proof of something they already knew. I'm at Douglas County Records, he said. Looking at the file now. And it's thinner than it should be. I waited. Its standard accident file runs 12 to 15 pages minimum. Theodore continued. This one's got 9. 2 pages missing from the sequence page 7 and page 11. Crash scene, detailed report, and skid mark forensic analysis. Missing how? Not lost, removed. Both pages have notation stamps. Removed for supervisory review. H. Riddle with handwritten signature. No return date. I closed my eyes. There's more, Theodore said. The document tracking number on the folder covers someone tried to erase it, used white correction fluid. Did a decent job, but you can see the edges if you know what to look for. Would show up clear under UV light. Why erase the tracking number? Makes it harder to cross-reference, harder to prove pages were removed. Someone who knew record systems did this, not amateur hour. Someone had been in a hurry, someone who needed the file cleaned before anyone asked the right questions. I'm photographing everything, Theodore said. The thin folder, the removal notations, the correction fluid traces. There's even a partial fingerprint on the folder edge, might be, Riddle's might be, whoever handled it after him. Gerald Stratton, the archives clerk, didn't question you. Told him I was researching accident reconstruction methods for a Portland Police Academy lecture. He brought the file without blinking. 30 years in records management teaches you not to ask why retired detectives need old files. What else is in there? What they wanted to leave, Theodore said. Initial responding officer report, generic, no details. Medical examiner, preliminary, consistent with vehicular accident. Riddle's closure memo, suicide due to depression, no suspicious circumstances. Everything sanitized, everything that mattered surgically removed. I stood on the cabin porch holding the phone and understood something with perfect clarity. The accident hadn't been investigated. It had been managed. Someone knew exactly which pages to remove crash scene details and skid mark forensics, the only 2 pieces of evidence that would prove Romilly was run off the road by a second vehicle. The question wasn't whether Sheriff Harlan Riddle had covered it up. The question was who had enough reach to make a county sheriff destroy evidence and get away with it for 18 years. Come back, I said to Theodore. We need to figure out who Riddle was protecting. Laverne Price, the cardiac care nurse. No relation to the medical examiner, opened her door in Lake Oswego on Friday afternoon and looked at Theodore for exactly 3 seconds before saying, I wondered when someone would finally come asking about her. And I knew from Theodore's phone call later that she'd been waiting 18 years to tell someone what she knew. Theodore had driven to Lake Oswego Friday morning with Linnea's photo in his jacket. He'd found Laverne through retired nurse registry, 2 phone calls, 1 helpful records clerk. When he knocked at 2:30, she opened the door, already knowing why he was there. She led him to a living room with family photos on every surface. Tea was already prepared like she'd expected a visitor. Theodore set Linnea's photo on the coffee table without preamble. Laverne looked at it for a long moment. That's Linnea Blanchard, she said. She worked cardiac care rotation with me at Portland Community Clinic, late 2006 around October. You remember her specifically. I've thought about her many times over the years, wondered if anyone would come asking the right questions. Took longer than I expected. What happened with Linnea? Theodore asked. Laverne poured tea with steady hands, 30 years of nursing handling emergencies without panic. She approached me in October 2006, Laverne said. Asked me to process additional digoxin from pharmacy inventory beyond what patient charts authorized. 0.5 milligram tablets. Enough that I knew immediately it wasn't for standard cardiac maintenance. How much? 90 tablets. Digoxin is digitalis from foxglove. Therapeutic dose is 0.25 milligrams daily, 0.5 for severe cases. But 90 tablets. Laverne shook her head. That's not therapy. What did you do? Asked for patient authorization, standard protocol. She said it was for a private client she cared for at home, insisted it was legitimate. And I reported it to my department head the next morning, because that's what you do when medication requests don't match charts. Some people keep emails because they're sentimental, some because they're evidence, and some because 18 years ago something told them that deleting certain truths would make them complicit in whatever came after. What happened after you reported it? Theodore asked. 48 hours later, termination paperwork, uncooperative attitude, failure to support team dynamics. 30 years at that clinic without a single disciplinary note, fired for being uncooperative. No prior warnings? None. The department head wouldn't meet with me. HR processed my exit the same afternoon. Someone had made calls, someone with enough weight that a nurse reporting medication irregularities got eliminated instead of investigated. Before I turned in my badge, Laverne continued. I forwarded one email to my personal laptop, the prescription confirmation showing exactly what Linnea requested when, and my refusal notation. I didn't know why I was saving it, just knew I had to. Do you still have it? Laverne walked to a closet, returned carrying an old laptop. The screen flickered to life. I've tried to delete this email hundreds of times over 18 years, she said quietly. Every time I moved it to trash, something stopped me from emptying it. I told myself I was being paranoid, but I kept it anyway. She turned the laptop toward Theodore. The email sat exactly where she'd saved it. Subject pharmacy request, digoxin 0.5 milligrams. Date, October 23rd, 2006. Request for digoxin 0.5 milligram quantity 90 tablets. My refusal notation is right there. Linnea's signature on the attached request form. October 23rd, 2006. 2 weeks before my first wife died. Theodore photographed the screen, asked if Laverne would testify if needed. I've been ready for 18 years, she said. He called me at 4 p.m. from his car. The email is still there, he said. I was on the cabin porch. Romilly was inside, reading. Oregon afternoon light slanted through pines. Tell me. October 23rd, 2006. Linnea requested 90 tablets of digoxin, 0.5 milligram from Clinic Pharmacy. Laverne refused, reported it. Got fired 48 hours later. And the email? Everything's there. The request, the refusal. Linnea's signature. Date stamped 2 weeks before your wife died. I absorbed what that meant. My first wife hadn't died of spontaneous heart failure. She'd been poisoned, and the nurse who refused to provide the poison had been eliminated before she could cause problems. Laverne kept it on a personal laptop, Theodore continued. Never connected to the clinic network, never backed up anywhere it could be accessed or erased. 18 years because she couldn't bring herself to delete it. Why not? She said something stopped her. Every time she tried to empty the trash folder, something told her not to. Well, she wasn't paranoid, I said. No, she was being a witness. I looked through the cabin window at Romilly, my daughter who'd been disappeared because she'd seen too much, who'd spent 18 years with no memory because someone wanted to make sure she couldn't testify. And now, we had digital evidence that Linnea had tried to obtain a lethal overdose 2 weeks before my first wife's heart stopped. Evidence that survived 15 years because one nurse couldn't press delete. Can it be authenticated? I asked. Metadata's intact. Original email headers, clinic server information. It'll hold up. Theodore called me from Laverne's living room at 4 p.m. and said 5 words that changed everything. The email is still there. 18 years of digital evidence sitting on a personal laptop that had never been connected to any network where it could be erased. Proof that Linnea Blanchard had requested a lethal overdose of heart medication 2 weeks before my first wife's heart stopped. Laverne Price had been fired for refusing to provide it, and she'd kept the email for 15 years because something instinct conscience, the quiet voice that tells certain people they're witnesses to something that will matter someday, wouldn't let her press delete. She'd chosen to preserve it, and that choice was about to matter more than she'd ever imagined. Orville Weaver was standing on his porch when Theodore's car pulled into the Yakima County farmyard Saturday afternoon, and before Theodore could introduce himself, Orville said the words Theodore had heard twice already this week. I knew this day would come. Theodore told me about it later. The farm, 20 acres of quiet Washington land, 2 old dogs in the dirt yard. Orville, at 71, looked like a man who'd spent decades driving freight shoulders, bent from long hours, hands scarred from loading docks. You're here about the girl from Highway 138, Orville said. Theodore nodded. I worked Perry Freight 20 years. Drove that route 1,000 times. Only stopped once. November 15th, 2006. I pulled her out of that car, Orville said. I've been waiting 18 years for someone to come asking why. He gestured toward the house. Come inside. This takes time. The kitchen smelled like coffee and wood smoke. Orville poured 2 cups, set them on a worn table. I was driving home after a late delivery. Heavy rain. Highway 138 about midnight. I saw headlights plunge off the cliff maybe 200 yards ahead. What did you do? Stopped, climbed down in the rain. The car was hooked on trees maybe 10 feet from the water. Driver's side crushed. She was trapped but breathing. I got her out. Then what? I didn't call 911. Not because I'm a coward, because I'd driven freight long enough to know when something's arranged. This felt arranged. How? The angle, the speed, the fact that her car was alone on the road at midnight in a rainstorm, and paint transfer on her rear bumper. Fresh. Someone had hit her from behind. There's a particular kind of moral calculation that happens when you pull someone from wreckage and realize that saving them the official way might get them killed more permanently than the accident did. I drove her to Providence Portland ER, left her at the entrance at 3:47 a.m., watched the night nurse take her inside. Then I left. You didn't wait that... No, I submitted my resignation to Perry Freight that morning from a rest stop. Never went back to Portland, bought this farm, and haven't left Yakima County since. You were afraid. Terrified, Orville corrected. I'd worked for Raymond Perry long enough to know he was a good man, but I also knew his wife and lawyer had access to everything. That girl in my truck was supposed to be dead. Calling the police might have finished what the crash started. Theodore called me at 8 p.m. from his car, told me everything. I stood on the cabin porch listening. He saved her life, I said, and spent 18 years wondering if he'd done the right thing. I hung up and went inside. Romilly was in the bedroom door half open, sitting on the bed looking out the window. Then I heard her voice, certain. Dad, I remember. I walked to the doorway. What do you remember? I was driving home on Highway 138, raining. There was a truck behind me in the mirror, no headlights, just following. I sat in the chair by the door, didn't interrupt. I sped up, the truck sped up, matched my speed exactly, not random, deliberate. What happened next? Impact, rear end, hard enough that I lost the wheel. The car went sideways, then off the road. I remember trees, the airbag. I remember thinking this is how I die. She stopped. I waited. And then just before everything went black, headlights from the opposite lane flashed across my rearview mirror, just for a tenth of a second, long enough to see into the truck behind me. My hands gripped the chair arms. I saw his face, Romilly said. Lloyd Ashford, the man I'd sat across from that afternoon, the man my mother told me to trust. He was driving the truck. Tenth of a second, that's how long it takes for headlights to illuminate a face in a rearview mirror, long enough to recognize someone you trusted 4 hours earlier. You're certain. I've been seeing that face in nightmares for weeks without knowing whose it was. Now I know it was Lloyd. I sat there understanding what that meant. Lloyd hadn't just made a phone call, he'd driven the truck himself, followed her from his office, waited for the right stretch of highway, rear-ended her hard enough to send her over the cliff, and he would have succeeded if Orville hadn't been driving home that exact night. I called Theodore at 9:45 p.m. She remembered, I said. Romilly saw Lloyd's face in the rearview mirror. He was driving the truck. Silence. Then, I'm 2 hours from the cabin. Don't sleep. We need to figure out what comes next. Because now we had Orville's testimony about the rescue, Laverne's email about the digoxin, Sheriff Riddle's deleted file pages, and Romilly's memory of Lloyd behind the wheel. We had everything except the one thing that would make it all matter, a way to prove it that wouldn't get us killed the way it almost killed her. I stood on the cabin porch waiting for Theodore and thought about Lloyd Ashford, family lawyer, mother's college friend, the man my first wife had trusted enough to name in her warning letter. And he'd used that trust to send my daughter off a cliff. The question wasn't whether we had enough evidence. The question was whether we could find someone with authority to act on it who wasn't already in Lloyd's pocket. Because if we went to the wrong person, if we showed our hand to someone who made one phone call, we'd end up exactly where Romilly had been, targets who knew too much. Theodore's headlights appeared at midnight. He got out carrying a manila folder, thick with documentation. We need to decide, he said. Keep investigating to build an airtight case, or take what we have to someone now before they realize Romilly's alive and talking. I looked at the folder. 15 years of evidence gathered in 2 weeks. Tomorrow morning, I said. We decide tomorrow. But I already knew what we'd choose. We couldn't wait. Every day Romilly stayed at the cabin was another day Lloyd and Linnea might discover she was alive. Another day they might realize their 18-year-old secret was about to surface. Another day they had to eliminate the witness they'd failed to kill the first time. We had the evidence. Now we needed someone with the authority and the courage to act on it before the people who'd gotten away with murder for 18 years figured out their careful conspiracy was unraveling. Sunday morning, we spread everything on the cabin table: Roseburg file photos, Laverne's email, printout, Orville's contact information, Romilly's written account of the rearview mirror, and I watched my daughter stare at the red garnet necklace, like she was seeing it for the first time in a way that mattered. Theodore had arrived at midnight. We'd slept 3 hours. Now coffee was brewing and evidence covered the table in careful rows. Romilly picked up the necklace, held it to morning light streaming through the window, turned it slowly, studying the engraved border pattern I'd commissioned from a Portland jeweler 18 years ago. The engraved border, she said. You had this custom made. You specified this exact pattern. I wanted it to be unique, I said. Something that couldn't be mistaken for anything else. It's not just decorative, Romilly said quietly, more to herself than to us. The pattern has a function. She set the necklace on the table and looked at me. I'm a computer science sophomore, she said. Second year. I know what I did when I took the letter to Lloyd's office. I prepared for the worst. Theodore leaned forward. What do you mean? Romilly's fingernail found the edge of the engraved pattern where it met the stone setting, pressed a specific point. The stone clicked sound so small I almost missed it, and the surface flipped open on a hidden hinge I'd never known existed. Inside, the hollow garnet, waterproof, silicone lining, professional grade, moisture protection, and nestled in the silicone, a micro SD card module smaller than my thumbnail. Intact, sealed. You built this? Theodore said, not a question. Before I went to his office, Romilly confirmed. I stared at the tiny module, at the modification my 18-year-old daughter had engineered into a birthday gift I'd given her. Why'd I asked? Because I read Mom's letter. I knew something was wrong. I knew going to Lloyd meant... She stopped, started again. I knew it was dangerous. She touched the module, gently didn't remove it. Second-year computer science. We'd learned about data storage, miniaturization, digital evidence preservation. I bought this module online, 5 millimeters, recording capability up to 64 gigabytes depending on compression. You modified the necklace yourself, Theodore asked. Drilled the cavity with a jeweler's bit, lined it with waterproof silicone, installed the module with the microphone positioned at the stone edge, picks up sound in roughly a 180-degree arc. She looked at me. I tested the waterproofing in the sink, ran it through temperature stress tests, made sure the seal would hold. Then I wore it to Lloyd's office, recording everything. There's a specific kind of pride that comes from learning. Your daughter was smarter at 18 than you were at 63, the kind that hurts and heals simultaneously. You recorded the meeting, I said. I recorded everything. The letter reading, his phone call, whatever he said after I left. Theodore examined the module without touching it. Chain of custody concerns. We need to extract this properly. Can it still work? I asked. After 18 years? Theodore was quiet for a moment. NAND flash memory can theoretically hold data 20 to 30 years without power, he said carefully. Theoretically. But this module was never plugged in after 2006. That's good for preservation, no write cycles degrading the cells. But 18 years is a long time. Temperature fluctuations, humidity, physical stress from being worn daily. He looked at Romilly. The waterproofing you built probably saved it. Moisture is the biggest killer for flash storage, but there's still no guarantee. What do we need? I asked. A specialized card reader, data recovery software, forensic-grade environment to prevent contamination during extraction. I have contacts in Portland specialists who work with damaged drives. How long? 24 hours minimum to attempt recovery. Longer if we need multiple extraction methods. Romilly stared at the module. What are the odds it survived? Theodore considered. Honestly, 50-50. Maybe 60-40 in favor of preservation given your waterproofing. But maybe and certainly are different words. How do you spend 24 hours waiting to find out if your daughter recorded her own attempted murder 18 years ago, and the evidence survived long enough to matter? Take it, I said to Theodore. Do whatever you need to do. Theodore carefully removed the module from its silicone housing using tweezers from his evidence kit, placed it in a static-proof bag, sealed it. I'll drive to Portland now, he said. Call you when I know something. He looked at the evidence spread across the table, at the necklace with its hidden compartment now exposed, at Romilly sitting there, having just explained how her 18-year-old self had prepared for betrayal using the only skills she had. If this recording survived, Theodore said quietly, it's the only evidence we have that's completely untouchable. Everything else, Laverne's email, Orville's testimony, the file photos can be questioned, challenged, discredited. But audio of Lloyd making that phone call while Romilly sat in his office, that's unambiguous. He stood. 24 hours, I'll call either way. After Theodore left, I sat with Romilly in the cabin living room. The necklace lay on the table between us, compartment still open empty now. You knew, I said. At 18 you knew they might try to kill you. I knew something was wrong, Romilly said. Mom's letter was terrified. I'd never seen her handwriting shake like that. So I prepared the only way I could think of, make sure if something happened, there'd be proof. The SD module, the recording, everything Lloyd said, everything I heard him say on that phone call. She looked at me. I just didn't expect to forget I'd done it. I thought about 18-year-old Romilly modifying a birthday necklace into evidence recorder, about her sitting in Lloyd's office knowing it was dangerous, knowing she was documenting her own potential murder, doing it anyway, because her dying mother had told her to trust him, and about how 18 years later, that same necklace had led me to her under a Seattle bridge, how the evidence she'd prepared had waited all this time to matter. If the data survived, if Theodore could extract it, if 18 years of entropy hadn't degraded the recording beyond recovery, 24 hours between maybe and certainty, between brilliant preparation and successful outcome, between justice and just another piece of hardware that couldn't deliver what we needed. Theodore returned to the cabin Monday evening at 6 p.m., carrying a laptop and the expression of someone who'd spent 6 hours watching data emerge from what should have been digital silence. And before he said anything, I knew from his face that Romilly's 18-year-old engineering had worked. He set the laptop on the cabin dining table, sat without ceremony. 94% intact, he said. The specialist spent 6 hours using forensic-grade software. Some audio degradation from 18 years unpowered, but speech is fully intelligible. How long? I asked. 47 minutes. Romilly sat at the head of the table. Theodore and I flanked her. Theodore turned off all the cabin lights, just the three of us, and the laptop screen glowing in the darkness. Quality is rough, Theodore warned. Homemade equipment, background noise, but every word is clear. He looked at both of us. Are you ready? I wasn't. I nodded anyway. Theodore pressed play. The audio began with ambient sound. November rain on window glass, office chair, creaking distant traffic noise filtering through what I knew was Lloyd's U.S. Bancorp Tower office on the 47th floor. Then a voice I hadn't heard in 18 years. Not the woman sitting at this table. Not the voice that had said, "Dad, I remember," 3 days ago. 18-year-old Romilly, young, slightly trembling, but trying to sound adult. My mother wrote a letter before she died. She said I needed to show someone. She said you were the only person who would believe me. Lloyd's voice came through the speaker. Professional, measured. The voice of a family attorney who'd known my first wife in law school, who'd been at our wedding, who'd held infant Romilly at her christening. I see. And your mother specifically mentioned these medication discrepancies. Yes. She said Linnea was requesting things that didn't make sense. She was scared. She wrote it all down because she thought young Romilly's voice caught. She thought something was going to happen to her. Sound of papers rustling, Lloyd reading the letter. This is serious, Lloyd said. Your mother was right to trust me with this. I'm glad you came to me. What do I do? Let me handle it. I'll make some calls. We'll get this investigated properly. There's a specific kind of pain in hearing your child trust someone who's about to try to kill her. The recording continued, young Romilly thanking Lloyd, Lloyd reassuring her. Then the sound that changed everything. Phone dialing, old landline, each digit distinct through the speaker. 7 tones, then ringing. A woman answered. Yes, Lloyd's voice different now. Not professional, familiar. It's me, we have a problem. Silence on the line, then Linnea's voice. My wife of 14 years. She knows too much. Lloyd, handle it. Everything should have been mine a long time ago. Not angry, not emotional, just stating fact. Tonight? Lloyd asked. Tonight, Linnea confirmed. 2 words. I've heard bad things in my life. Never 2 words that heavy. The call ended. Sound of Lloyd returning to his desk. I've made some calls, Lloyd said to young Romilly. You're safe now. This will be handled properly. Go home. Get some rest. I'll contact you in a few days with next steps. Thank you, 18-year-old Romilly said. My mother said you were someone I could trust. Your mother was a good woman, Lloyd said. I'm sorry for your loss. The recording continued for another 30 minutes, office sounds, Lloyd making other calls none relevant. Then it ended. Theodore stopped the playback. The cabin went silent. Romilly stared at the laptop screen without blinking. I looked at my hands. Theodore finally spoke. "I want to call Oregon State Police tonight. End this now." I shook my head. "Why not?" Theodore's voice was tight. "We have everything." Her voice ordering murder, his voice confirming it. "Riddle's still in office," I said. "Douglas County Sheriff. We don't know who else he's compromised locally. Signal gets out before we're ready. Linnea and Lloyd are gone in 24 hours. So what do you want to do?" "We finish gathering everything. Then we go to FBI Portland field office directly. Bypass the local level entirely. One strike. Heavy enough nobody escapes." Theodore looked at me across the table. 30 years of friendship told him I was right, even if he didn't like it. "How long?" Theodore asked. "Soon. Days, not weeks. But not tonight. Not until we know exactly who to hand this to and exactly how to make sure it doesn't leak." Romilly stood and walked outside. I heard the porch door close. "She just heard her 18-year-old self thank the man who tried to kill her," Theodore said quietly. "I know. And you want to wait." "I want to be certain," I said. "When you only have one blow, don't use it early. Wait until there's no way to avoid it. No margin for error. No room for escape." Theodore closed the laptop. "We have everything," Theodore said. "What else do we need?" "It's federal authority to act on it without giving them time to run," I said. "And we need to make sure when we hand this over, it goes to someone who can't be bought or scared." I stood and looked out the window at Romilly, standing on the porch silhouette against Oregon darkness. "We wait," I said. "We prepare. And when we move, it's the last move anyone needs to make." Theodore was quiet for a long time. "The 30 years I've known you," he finally said. "Never seen you patient about anything. Now you want to wait." "Now I have something worth protecting," I said. "My daughter's alive. She's getting her memory back. And I'm not risking that she spends another 15 years running because I moved too fast and the wrong people found out she was talking." Theodore nodded slowly. "And days," but he said, "not weeks." "Days," I confirmed. We had everything except the certainty that when we pulled the trigger, the shot would land where it needed to. And in this kind of fight, you don't get to reload. I drove back to the Portland mansion Tuesday morning, wearing the same melancholic expression Linnea had watched for 18 years. And the hardest part wasn't pretending to be broken. It was remembering that for 14 of those years, the brokenness had been real. The garage door opener still worked. I pulled the truck beside Linnea's Lexus and sat for a moment before the performance began. The house smelled like cinnamon, scented candles burning in the living room, the kind Linnea lit when she wanted the space to feel warm. She came down the stairs wearing concern that looked genuine after 14 years of practice. "Ray, you look exhausted. These long runs are too much for you. You should let the younger drivers handle distance routes." I set my keys on the counter. "I'm fine. The truck helps. You know that." I'd said variations of this sentence for 18 years. It still sounded true because part of it was. Linnea had dinner ready by evening. Chicken, roasted vegetables, wine. She knew I didn't drink anymore, but always poured anyway. 2 weeks is a long time," she said. "I worry when you're gone that long. It's Seattle to Sacramento loop. Picked up extra deliveries, makes the trip worthwhile." She nodded, believed it. I'd been making these runs for 30 years. I ate slowly. The chicken was good. 14 years of shared meals, and I'd never once suspected the woman serving dinner had murdered my first wife until the financial reports started looking wrong 5 years ago. That's the thing about long cons. They look like love until you know what you're looking at. After dinner, she poured coffee and sat across from me, with the expression she used when she'd been thinking about something practical. "I've been thinking with all your travel we should have property management authorization in place, just as precaution. Lloyd prepared the paperwork. Ensures smooth business continuity if something unexpected happens." I looked at her. She held my gaze steady, earnest. "That ain't makes sense," I said slowly. "I'll read through it carefully. Sign it end of week." Her smile flickered, quick, subtle, satisfied. "No rush," she said. "Just when you have time." I nodded, voice tired, compliant. The voice of someone who'd stopped caring about details years ago. She stood and cleared the plates, humming something soft. I watched her and thought, "You don't know Perry Freight, L. LC has 3 used trucks and $40,000. Everything else left 5 years ago. You're chasing a shell with my name on it and nothing inside. Acting grief is different from feeling it. One exhausts you from the performance, the other just exhausts you. After 18 years, I'd learned to tell the difference. The first kind you can stop when nobody's watching. The second kind follows you into empty rooms and doesn't care whether anyone sees. I'd stopped performing 5 years ago when Theodore first said Romilly's accident file looked edited, started preparing instead. Wednesday morning, Theodore drove to downtown Portland, 12th floor Pioneer Place office tower. Leland Finch, 55, had practiced estate law for 30 years and carried the specific discretion that comes from knowing when not to ask questions. In 2019, he'd helped me establish the Perry Legacy Trust without asking why I didn't want Linnea's name anywhere near it. Theodore told me about it later that evening. Leland had the door open before Theodore knocked. Raymond called ahead, Leland said. Said you'd be coming. Said I should show you the 2019 trust without making you explain why it matters. He pulled a file from the locked cabinet. Thick, legal weight paper. I helped him establish this 5 years ago. He told me he wanted Romilly protected. Didn't say from whom. I didn't ask. Leland spread the documents across the conference table. December light coming through floor-to-ceiling windows, winter gray and cold. Perry Legacy Trust, Leland said. Established September 2019 under Oregon Revised Statutes 130.220. Irrevocable structure cannot be modified or dissolved without beneficiary consent. Theodore leaned over the papers. Primary beneficiary Romilly Perry identified by date of birth and social security number. Linnea Blanchard does not appear in any capacity, not as trustee, not as contingent beneficiary, not as agent. Nowhere. What's in the trust? Theodore asked. Leland turned pages. Everything that matters. Portland Depot property, 4.2 acres, valued $8 million. Federal contracts, USPS, an Army Corps of Engineers worth $6 million annually. Proprietary dispatch software Raymond developed, valued $4 million. Entire truck fleet ownership transferred to trust leased back to Perry Freight LLC for operations. And what's left in the company? Corporate shell, 3 depreciated vehicles, $40,000 in the operating account, the name and not much else. Theodore was quiet. Outside the window, Christmas shoppers moved through Pioneer Square bundled against Portland rain. September 2019, 3 months after the financial reports first looked wrong, 5 years before Linnea thought she'd won. Under Oregon law, Leland continued, pre-dispute irrevocable trust assets cannot be claimed by a spouse in any proceeding. Divorce, probate, civil judgment doesn't matter. Once the trust was established and assets transferred, they left the marital estate permanently. She doesn't know, Theodore said. Raymond was very clear that she shouldn't, Leland replied. He continued operating Perry Freight LLC exactly as before. Same routes, same clients, same public face. But everything that had value moved into irrevocable protection with Romilly as sole beneficiary. Leland closed the file. If someone were to acquire Perry Freight LLC through authorization or transfer, they would own a $40,000 shell company. The assets don't legally exist in the entity anymore, haven't for 5 years. Theodore called me at 6 p.m. from Leland's office. The trust is intact, he said. Everything you moved in 2019 is protected under Oregon irrevocable trust law. Romilly is sole beneficiary. Linnea's name doesn't appear anywhere in the documentation. I was sitting in my home office when he called. Downstairs, Linnea hummed in the kitchen, preparing dinner, believing she was days away from finally claiming everything she'd murdered for. She thought she was patient. 14 years of devotion and manipulation. 18 years of watching me grieve. She didn't know the fortune she was working so hard to steal had stopped existing in Perry Freight LLC the same year I started suspecting her. Good, I said quietly. Now we know what she thinks she's winning. I learned what Lloyd Ashford did Wednesday evening from forensic accountant testimony and Lloyd's own laptop metadata seized by FBI in January 2025. Every detail confirmed under oath. Every timestamp verified. What follows is reconstruction from evidence, but it's accurate. Lloyd sat alone in his U.S. Bancorp Tower office Wednesday night at 8:43 p.m., 47th floor, city lights spreading below floor-to-ceiling windows, like a grid he'd learned to navigate without conscience. He opened the hidden drawer in his mahogany desk, not the obvious locked drawer clients saw, the one with the false bottom that clicked open only if you knew the sequence. Leather portfolio smell rose as he pulled documents free. Delaware LLC formation papers. Corporate name, Ashford Capital Management Services. Establishment date, December 21. 3 years ago, 6 months after Linnea first confided her plan to seize my assets. Lloyd spread the papers across his desk and opened his laptop. Blue glow lit his face as he pulled up an encrypted Excel file I'd later see projected in federal court on a screen 20 feet wide. Systematic theft timeline, December 2021 through November 2024. 36 months of entries, each row a transaction. Each transaction a lie, told to Linnea about joint offshore holdings that didn't exist the way she thought they did. Total diverted $8.7 million. Method was elegant. Forged dual signature requirements on accounts Linnea believed were Cayman trusts. Fake account statements Lloyd printed himself on stolen bank letterhead. Routing numbers that led to his Delaware LLC instead of Caribbean islands. Linnea thought she was stealing from me with Lloyd's help. Lloyd was stealing from her while she stole from me, a parasite on a parasite. The irony still stuns me. While I was mourning a daughter, I thought dead two people were fighting over my life's work like vultures, and the smaller vulture was winning. Lloyd's phone buzzed on the glass desk. Text message, 6:14 p.m. from Linnea. Meeting ran late, home by 10. He set the phone down. According to office security footage introduced at trial, he returned to his laptop without visible concern. The HVAC system hummed above him, 47 floors of climate control, keeping everything comfortable. And Linnea had no idea that her Cayman trustee, the one who sent her quarterly statements and wire confirmations, was actually Lloyd's college roommate in Wilmington, Delaware, who'd been CCing Lloyd on every email for 3 years. She thought she was patient, thought 14 years of devotion had earned her my fortune. She didn't know Lloyd had been patient longer. He opened the second drawer. Deeper. Items arranged with the precision of someone who'd rehearsed this moment. Portuguese passport. Photo showed Lloyd's face under a different name, Leonard Ashton. Portugal residency permits tucked behind it, purchased through Golden Visa program for €500,000 in 2022. Lisbon apartment lease starting January 15th, 2025. Already paid first and last month. Flight itinerary printed on crisp white paper, December 28, 2024. PDX to LIS via Toronto. One way, non-extradition country for financial crimes, new life ready. 10 days away. He'd been planning this exact exit for 28 months. Every detail mapped, every contingency prepared. Lloyd pulled up his final departure checklist. 23 items, 19 already checked green. Item 14, confirm Romilly Perry, death certificate on file with all institutions. He paused, frowned slightly, opened browser, searched Douglas County Vital Records database, found the death certificate dated November 15, 2006. But there was a notation he'd never seen before, small text at bottom. Amended January 2007, clerical error, original filing pending verification. His breathing pattern changed. Mouse hovered over the notation. Before I tell you what Lloyd did next, are you still with me right now? Comment A if you think Lloyd catches the warning sign, or B if you think he dismisses it, and add one short reason, so I can see how you're reading this. Because what comes next rewrites who's actually in control. Please note, the next part includes some recreated details for narrative purposes, but the core facts are verified from court evidence. Laptop metadata captured 11 seconds between mouse clicks, enough time to read the notation twice. Then he closed the tab. Then he closed the browser tab. Bureaucratic noise. Oregon Vital Records were notoriously sloppy with amendments. Didn't mean anything. He returned to his checklist. Item 19. Final asset transfer, $2.1 million remaining in Linnea's accounts to be moved December 27, 2024, 11:59 p.m. He'd scheduled the transfer to execute automatically 1 minute before midnight. By then, he'd be at PDX Airport. By the time Linnea checked her accounts December 28th morning, he'd be over the Atlantic. She'd call him, he wouldn't answer. She'd check the Cayman accounts, find zero balances. She'd call the trustee, number disconnected. By the time she understood, Leonard Ashton would be having breakfast in Lisbon, watching the Tagus River through apartment windows that cost €500,000 to access. Keyboard clicks as Lloyd marked item 19 complete. Satisfied exhale. Leather chair creaked as he leaned back. Lloyd planned for every variable. Linnea's greed, banking regulations, extradition treaties, even exchange rate fluctuations between dollar and euro. Every variable except one. He closed the laptop, locked both drawers with the careful precision of someone who believed in systems, straightened his tie in the darkened window reflection. Behind him, Portland's skyline glittered, city he'd never see again after December 28th. He was proud of his execution. 3 years, 0 mistakes, perfect planning. Distant car horns 47 floors below. Office lights clicked off automatically as he gathered his coat. Lloyd walked to the elevator, pressed the button. As doors slid open, his phone buzzed. Spam email, subject line, discover your ancestry genealogy, DNA matching services. He deleted it without reading, stepped into the elevator. Doors closed. 47 floors below, in the FedEx Dropbox outside the U.S. Bancorp Tower lobby, an envelope addressed to FBI Portland Field Office sat in tonight's final pickup. Inside USB drive containing every document from my truck sleeper, safe plus audio recording from Romilly's necklace plus Laverne's digoxin email plus edited accident file pages. And one item Lloyd didn't know existed. Hair sample from Romilly's childhood bedroom, collected from her hairbrush I'd kept in a sealed bag for 15 years because I couldn't throw away the last physical piece of my daughter. What Lloyd didn't know, what he couldn't have known because he'd never asked the right questions, was that in September 2006, Romilly had mailed a sealed envelope to a Portland attorney she found in the phone book, someone she'd never met. Someone with no connection to Lloyd or Linnea. Inside a handwritten letter, a copy of her mother's amended will, and a notarized statement describing what she feared might happen, with instructions to open it only if she was reported dead within 2 years. The attorney kept it for 18 years. When FBI contacted him in January 2025, the envelope was still sealed. Before Lloyd called Linnea. Before Linnea said, "Tonight." Outside, FedEx truck engine started. Driver loaded the evening pickup. Lloyd had planned for Linnea's greed banking regulations, extradition treaties, even currency fluctuations. He never planned for an 18-year-old girl's foresight from 18 years ago. The variable he thought was buried was about to prove she'd never been dead at all. Theodore walked through the unmarked door on the 4th floor of the Marco Hatfield Courthouse Thursday morning at 9:17 a.m., carrying a laptop manila envelope and the USB drive that would activate an FBI investigation in 24 hours if the forensic lab believed him. He told me about it later that evening, sitting in the cabin with the kind of exhausted precision that comes from spending 6 hours being methodically questioned by federal agents. The interview room was gray. Not metaphorically gray, actually, gray. Walls, table, chairs. Agent Jacinta Holbrook met him there, mid-40s, FBI special agent assigned to Portland Field Office White-Collar Crime Division, known for meticulous evidence authentication protocols Theodore had researched before walking in. She sat across from him without ceremony. "You submitted unsolicited evidence Saturday," Holbrook said. "We've reviewed your cover letter. Walk me through what you have." Theodore placed the laptop envelope and USB drive on the gray table. 3 items, he said. Each one alone is circumstantial. Together, they're a conspiracy. Holbrook opened a legal pad. "Start with the oldest evidence first." Theodore opened the manila envelope, pulled out the first document, email from Laverne Price, cardiac care nurse at Portland Community Clinic, dated October 23, 2006. Subject line, pharmacy request, digoxin 0.5 milligrams. Her refusal to process Linnea Blanchard's prescription request, with notation. Holbrook read it, made notes. "Before whose death?" she asked. Theodore pulled out the second document, Roseburg police file photos showing Sheriff Riddle's signature on evidence logs. Romilly Perry, declared dead November 15, 2006. "Declared," Holbrook repeated, "not confirmed." She's alive," Theodore said. "That's why I'm here." Holbrook set down her pen. "Show me the third item." Theodore opened the laptop, loaded the audio file. 47 minutes, metadata visible on screen, showing recording date November 14, 2006. "This is a recording Romilly Perry made herself the night before she disappeared. It's 47 minutes long. You need to hear the first 8 minutes." Holbrook put on headphones. Theodore watched her face as she listened. Her expression didn't change for the first 3 minutes. Professional neutrality. FBI training. Then she reached the phone call. Lloyd's voice, Linnea's voice. The word, tonight. Holbrook's eyes narrowed. She listened for another 5 minutes, then paused the playback and removed the headphones. Where did this recording come from? The SD card module hidden in a necklace Romilly Perry wore in 2006. She recorded it herself the night she disappeared. 18-year-old girl who suspected something was wrong and built her own evidence collection device. Chain of custody, Holbrook asked. Who handled this between 2006 and now? Theodore had prepared for this question. The device stayed sealed in Raymond Perry's truck safe from November 2006 until 3 weeks ago. No intermediate handlers. Romilly hid it. Raymond found it. Nobody else touched it. Holbrook made more notes. That's extraordinarily clean chain of custody for 18-year-old evidence. Romilly planned for someone to find it, Theodore said quietly. She just didn't know it would take 18 years. She didn't know her father would spend nearly 2 decades thinking she was dead. Didn't know the necklace would sit in a truck safe collecting dust while the people who tried to kill her lived free. Didn't know her own foresight at 18 would outlast every lie they told about her. Holbrook reviewed her notes. Federal Rules of Evidence 901 requires authentication before this is admissible. Our forensic lab will verify audio authenticity, metadata, integrity email headers. How long? Theodore asked. 24 hours for priority review. If your evidence authenticates, we request arrest warrants by Friday evening. Theodore leaned forward. Lloyd Ashford flies to Lisbon December 28th, Portugal, non-extradition country for financial crimes. You have 4 days. We're aware, Holbrook said. That's why this is priority review. 4 days between evidence verification and escape. 24 hours for forensics. 72 hours for Lloyd to realize the net was closing and run early. The window was razor thin. Theodore left FBI headquarters at 3:47 p.m., called me from his truck. They're moving, he said. 24 hours, Friday evening at latest. Good, I said. I need you to meet me at U.S. Bank downtown. There's something I need to check. I'd been thinking about it since Wednesday. Something my first wife said 3 months before she died. Something about protecting Romilly no matter what happened. Leland met me at the bank at 2:18 p.m. Private safe room, 4th floor. The kind of room where families keep documents they hope never matter. I had the key from my first wife's effects. Small brass key I'd carried for 17 years without knowing what it opened. The safe deposit box attendant verified my signature and left us alone. The box was small, metal, cold to the touch when I pulled it from the vault slot. Inside, one sealed envelope. Wax seal still intact. My first wife's handwriting on the front, last will and testament confidential, open only in presence of attorney. I looked at Leland. He nodded. I broke the seal, sound of wax cracking. Inside legal weight paper, notarized 2007, 3 months after her diagnosis. Leland read it aloud because my hands were shaking too much to hold the pages steady. Last will and testament under Oregon Revised Statutes 112.385. Real property at 4847S. E. Hawthorne Boulevard and Perry Freight Depot land are sole inheritance from testator's family estate, not marital property. In the event Romilly Perry disappears, becomes incapacitated, or identity becomes unverifiable within 20 years of this document's execution, entire estate transfers to National Children's Welfare Foundation, Portland, Oregon. Any transfer executed without Romilly Perry's verified signature is void under ORS 112.235. Leland set the pages down. This clause means Linnea can't touch the core assets, he said, ever. Even if she destroyed every copy, this original will overrides anything she filed. Your first wife built a legal fortress you never saw. I stared at the notary seal. July 2007. My first wife died. October 2007. She had 3 months between diagnosis and death. 3 months to realize someone was targeting our family. 3 months to build protection I wouldn't discover for 17 years. How did she know? What did she see in those 3 months that made her write disappears instead of dies? What made her anticipate that Romilly's identity might become unverifiable? My wife didn't tell me about this clause. She knew before she died someone was targeting us. She saw it coming and built a trap they never knew existed. I held the will and thought about timelines. 20-year protection clause, written 2007, expires 2027. Romilly disappeared 2006, came back 2024, 18 years. 2 years inside the window. 2 years before my first wife's legal fortress would have dissolved and left everything vulnerable. She knew, somehow she knew. I arranged the pens on the conference table in perfect parallel lines, checked my watch 9:07 a.m., and waited for my wife and her lawyer to walk into the trap I'd spent 18 years preparing. My first wife knew someone was targeting our family. She built the legal fortress before she died, 3 months between diagnosis and death, and she used every day to protect Romilly from people I still trusted. Now I was just closing the gate. 2 document stacks sat in front of me on the Perry Freight conference room oak table, one with National Children's Welfare Foundation letterhead, one blank stack Linnea expected me to sign. Outside the window, Portland December rain, gray light washing everything clean. I was calm for the first time in 3 weeks. Theodore called Friday night. FBI verified everything. Audio authenticated. Metadata confirmed recording date. Laverne's email headers matched archive server logs. Chain of custody documentation accepted under federal rules of evidence. 24 hours later this meeting. Linnea asked for it 3 days ago, said it was time to finalize the transfer. She had no idea what I was finalizing. The conference room door opened at 9:12 a.m. Linnea entered first, wool coat, charcoal gray, leather portfolio under her arm. Professional. Lloyd followed, carrying briefcase, maintaining professional distance. She didn't greet me as her husband, nodded like a business associate. Lloyd set his briefcase on the table, click of metal latches opening. Raymond, Linnea said, "Thank you for agreeing to meet." "Not Ray, not Honey, Raymond." "Mr. Perry," Lloyd added. "I've prepared the finalized transfer documents per our previous discussions." "I appreciate you both coming," I said. "Please sit." Linnea sat across from me, not beside me, across. Lloyd sat adjacent, opened his briefcase, pulled out manila folders arranged in careful order. I noticed the choreography. Linnea's posture was negotiator, not grieving wife. Lloyd's distance was attorney-client professional, not family friend, who'd held my infant daughter at her christening. Lloyd slid a document toward me. Power of attorney, dated November 2024, Linnea's signature, notarized. This power of attorney grants Mrs. Perry full authority over estate assets, pending probate resolution, Lloyd said. I looked at the signature, Linnea's handwriting, practiced, confident. Probate for whom? I asked. Linnea's tone was patient, carefully modulated. For Romilly, the court declared her legally deceased in 2007. The estate should transfer accordingly. She said Romilly's name the way you'd say inventory item, legal obstacle, asset classification. Not my daughter, not the girl she'd promised my dying first wife she'd love like her own. Just estate component requiring resolution. I studied Linnea across the table. For 18 years I thought she was grieving Romilly too, thought we shared that loss, thought the silence between us was mutual mourning. Now I saw it clearly. She never mentions Romilly's name with affection, only as procedural matter. She's not widow mourning stepdaughter, she's investor collecting asset. She was wearing the pearl necklace I gave her on our 5th anniversary. Same neck that leaned over my first wife's hospital bed and promised devotion. Same voice that said, "I'll take care of them both, I promise." I loved a woman who never existed. Raymond, Linnea said. "Did you have questions about the transfer language?" "I'm following," I said. "Please continue." Lloyd walked me through document sections. Asset inventory, transfer terms, Linnea as sole beneficiary. His tone was helpful, professorial, patient attorney guiding confused widower through complex legal process. I asked basic questions, played the role he expected. And Section 3 transfers all real property, Lloyd explained. The house on Clackamas, the Perry Freight land, the Roseburg parcel to Mrs. Perry's sole ownership. And the business assets, I asked. Section 5, Perry Freight LLC valued at $22 million transferable upon your signature. He said $22 million, like it was still true, like the irrevocable trust didn't exist, like Leland Finch hadn't shown Theodore the 2019 documents proving everything that mattered left Perry Freight LLC 5 years ago. Linnea leaned forward slightly, watching. The sooner we finalize this, she said, the sooner we can move forward. Move forward, not heal, not honor Romilly's memory. Move forward with asset acquisition. I reached for the pen. Linnea's breathing changed, shallow, quick. I heard it across the table. Lloyd straightened papers, anticipating signature. I uncapped the pen, hovered over the signature line. And sign on the bottom line, Mr. Perry, Lloyd said. I'll witness. I paused. Before I sign, one question. Linnea's voice was carefully neutral. Of course. The recipient's name, I said. I want to make sure I'm signing the right document. I signed the paper, pushed it toward Linnea. She reached for it, read the recipient line. National Children's Welfare Foundation. Not her name, not Lloyd's. Linnea looked up, confusion breaking through the professional mask. I slid a second document forward, my first wife's 2007 will, certified copy from U.S. Bank Vault. Look at the recipient's name, I said. Linnea read it, her voice flattened. National Children's Welfare Foundation. My first wife's will, I said. Automatic transfer clause while Romilly remains unidentified. This is the only paper I'm signing today. The only legally binding paper in this room. 3 seconds of absolute silence. Linnea stared at the foundation letterhead. Lloyd's hand froze on his briefcase latch. I looked at them both and thought, justice doesn't always come fast, but it comes complete. My daughter spent 18 years in hiding. My wife spent 3 months dying while building a legal fortress. I spent 3 weeks uncovering the conspiracy. Now we collect. Lloyd's voice was quiet, measured. That will was invalidated in probate 2007. You destroyed a certified copy, I said. Not the original. Oregon ORS 112.235 original supersedes all copies. The original was in a safe deposit box you didn't know existed. My first wife made sure of that. Linnea stood. Lloyd stood. Both faces drained of color. Lloyd reached for his briefcase. The conference room door burst open, hard enough that the handle hit the wall. I didn't turn around. I kept my eyes on Linnea's face and watched it go from pale to ash white. Lloyd backed toward the wall. You can't... Linnea's voice broke. Raymond, what did you do? I looked at my wife, my second wife, the woman who'd murdered my first wife and tried to murder my daughter, and said the only thing that mattered. What my wife asked me to do 18 years ago. Protect our daughter. The door swung open and hallway light flooded the conference room, turning the first figure in the doorway into a silhouette I'd been waiting 18 years to see walk through that door again. I didn't turn around. I watched Linnea's face instead. That's where the truth shows first. Her eyes fixed on the doorway pupils contracting in the sudden light. Lloyd frozen mid-step toward the wall, one hand still reaching for his briefcase. Who is that? Linnea whispered. Lloyd started to say her name, Linnea, but she cut him off with a gesture sharp and dismissive, eyes still locked on whoever stood behind me. Theodore Madden entered first, stepped immediately to the left side of the doorway, professional stance, witness positioning, made eye contact with me briefly, nodded once. Mr. Perry, he said, quiet and formal. Ms. Blanchard, Mr. Ashford. Linnea's voice was tight. Theodore, what is this? Verification of evidence, ma'am. Special Agent Jacinta Holbrook entered next. Navy FBI windbreaker, followed by 2 other agents from Portland Field Office. Holbrook carried a manila folder, red stamp visible on the front, verified. The agents positioned themselves flanking the doorway. Professional spacing, exit coverage. Lloyd Ashford, Linnea Blanchard. Holbrook's voice was measured, federal. I'm Special Agent Holbrook, FBI, Portland. We have verified forensic evidence and questions regarding events November 2006. Lloyd recovered his lawyer composure, straightened his tie. We're happy to cooperate with any federal inquiry. That's fortunate, Holbrook said. You'll have opportunity shortly. Leland Finch entered carrying his leather briefcase, walked directly to the conference table, set it down across from Linnea's document stacks, clicked it open, removed a single document in a protective sleeve. Original will, my first wife's handwriting, visible through the plastic. Leland placed it on the oak table, said nothing. Let the document speak. Original last will and testament. Leland said via voice carrying the weight of 30 years practicing estate law. Dated 2007, Oregon ORS 112.385 compliant. Never invalidated. Lloyd stared at the document. That's impossible. We destroyed... He stopped, realized what he'd just said. Leland's expression didn't change. You destroyed a certified copy, not the original. 3 seconds of absolute silence. One more person in the hallway, still outside the doorway. I heard footsteps stop. Linnea's breathing was shallow, audible across the table. Lloyd's hand gripped his briefcase handle, knuckles white against leather. My heart hasn't beaten this hard since November 15th, 2006. The night I got the call that my daughter was dead. Except she wasn't. Raymond, Linnea said, voice barely audible. Who else is out there? I didn't answer. The final figure stepped into the doorway. Romilly Perry, my daughter, 36 years old. Minimalist charcoal suit hair, pulled up left temple scar, visible and unconcealed. Red garnet necklace, the same one I had commissioned for her 18th birthday in 2006, the one I thought was lost in the accident. She stood backlit by hallway fluorescence. Didn't speak. Didn't need to. She has her mother's jawline. I'd forgotten that. 18 years, and I'd forgotten the exact angle of defiance she inherited. The way she holds her chin when she's decided something, and nothing will change her mind. The scar on her left temple, that's new. That's from the night they tried to kill her. Faint white line running from hairline to eyebrow. She's not hiding it. Wearing it like evidence. Linnea stared, then made a sound half whisper, half choked gasp. It can't be. You're dead. Romilly stepped forward, walked past Theodore, past the FBI agents, past Leland. Stopped in the conference room center, 3 feet from me, 5 feet from Linnea. Said nothing. Presence spoke louder. Linnea backed toward the wall. You died in Roseburg, Douglas County death certificate. Laverne Riddle signed A. Ortstays and Woburikapo. Laverne Riddle tried to kill me, Romilly said. First words, quiet and clear. The voice I heard 3 weeks ago in the Clackamas cabin. The voice I thought I'd never hear again for 18 years. She failed. Lloyd turned to Romilly, desperate lawyer, grasping for procedural defense. You have no legal standing. You were declared deceased in 2007. Any claim? I have a birth certificate, Romilly said. I have DNA samples from 2006 registered in 3 genealogy databases. I have a social security number that's been dormant for 18 years. And I have this. She touched the scar on her temple. Physical evidence from the night Laverne Riddle shoved my car off Highway 138. The night you called Linnea and said it was done. The night you both thought you'd won. I looked at my daughter, fully, for the first time since she entered. 18 years since I saw those eyes. 18 years since I heard her voice say my name. She's not my little girl anymore. She's not the 18-year-old who disappeared with her mother's letter and a homemade recording device. She's the fortress her mother built. Living proof, walking evidence. I want to stand up. I want to hold her. I want to ask her where she's been, why she couldn't tell me she was alive, why 18 years of thinking she was dead when she was breathing the whole time. But she's here for justice first, reunion second. I understand that. Romilly met my eyes, almost imperceptible nod. Dad. One word, 18 years compressed into 3 letters. Linnea stared at Romilly, then at me, then at the National Children's Welfare Foundation transfer document, still lying on the oak table where I'd signed it. Understanding flooded her face. 18 years of planning, 18 years of positioning, 18 years of stealing, manipulating, murdering. All predicated on one assumption. Romilly was dead. Romilly was staying dead. Romilly would never come back. Linnea's voice broke. You were supposed to stay gone. I stayed gone long enough to watch you steal everything, Romilly said, unflinching. Long enough to gather proof. Long enough to make sure when I came back you couldn't run. Agent Holbrook stepped forward. Ms. Blanchard, we need to discuss your knowledge of events November 14th, 2006, and your relationship with Laverne Riddle. Specifically, we need to discuss a phone call made from Lloyd Ashford's office at 4:47 p.m. that day. Holbrook opened the manila folder, pulled out a single sheet. We have a 47-minute audio recording, she said. Verified by FBI Forensic Lab. Authenticated metadata, chain of custody documentation. Your voice is on that recording, Ms. Blanchard, ordering someone's death. Holbrook looked at Romilly. Her death. Linnea stared at my daughter. The daughter she'd tried to erase, the daughter who refused to die. The daughter who'd spent 18 years collecting every piece of evidence needed to destroy the people who destroyed her mother. And I watched Linnea realize that 18 years of patience, 18 years of calculation, 18 years of believing she'd won. All collapsed because one 18-year-old girl built a recording device in her bedroom and refused to stay buried. Romilly's hand went to the red garnet necklace at her throat. My wife's necklace, the one I thought we'd buried with her. And I realized it had been hiding the evidence all along. She walked to the conference table where Theodore's laptop sat open. Linnea watched frozen against the wall. Lloyd backed further into the corner, putting distance between himself and everyone. Agent Holbrook gestured toward the laptop. Ms. Perry, please present the evidence you preserved from November 14th, 2006. Romilly's voice was quiet. Everything I recorded that night is here. Linnea's voice rose. Recorded. You couldn't have? You were just a child? I was 18, Romilly said. Old enough to know when someone wanted me dead. She lifted the red garnet pendant, pressed a hidden clasp at the base I'd never noticed in all the years I'd seen my wife wear it. The bezel flipped open. Inside the micro SD card module, still sealed in its waterproof silicone housing, professional work. Invisible unless you knew where to look. Romilly removed the necklace, handed it to me. The weight settled in my palm, my gift to my daughter on her 18th birthday. I'd fastened it around her neck myself, saying I hoped it would protect her always. I thought I meant it sentimentally. Romilly had taken it literally. She had modified it herself in 2006, 2 months before they ran her off the road. She'd known something was wrong and used the only skill she had, a semester of computer science and a jeweler's drill, to prepare for the worst. She built her own fortress. She just didn't remember building it until now. Romilly removed the module carefully and inserted it into the forensic card reader Theodore had brought. Theodore clicked play. Conference room speakers crackled, then filled with sound. November rain on window glass. 18-year-old breathing, rustling fabric. November 14th, 2006, 9:47 p.m. Young Romilly's voice whisper soft. I'm in the upstairs hallway. Linnea's on the phone in Dad's office. The door is open 3 inches. That's her voice. The last time I heard that voice in person, she was saying goodbye before a weekend trip to Roseburg. Told me she'd be back Sunday evening. Asked if I needed anything from the route. I said no. Said drive safe. Said I loved her. I didn't know I wouldn't see her again for 18 years. The recording continued. Rain sounds, footsteps. Then Linnea's voice distant but clear through the phone speaker. Lloyd, it's me. We have a problem. Young Romilly's whisper again, shaking slightly. Linnea just said my name. She's talking about the trust fund Mom set up. She sounds angry. My daughter was terrified. 18 years old, hiding in a hallway, recording the woman I married because she knew something I didn't. She knew, and I didn't. I closed my eyes, listened to my daughter's voice narrate what she was hearing, the fear underneath the whisper, the careful breathing of someone trying to stay silent. She was documenting her own murder plan, and I was downstairs watching television, oblivious. Linnea's voice came through clearer now. The girl found the amended will. She asked me about the foundation clause today. Asked why her mother would transfer everything to charity if Romilly disappeared. Pause on the recording. Then the line that changed everything. She knows too much, Lloyd. Handle it tonight. Everything should have been mine. Lloyd's voice responded. Professional, clinical. The Roseburg route, Highway 138, has that curve past Mile. Post 14, Bo da Barin and Make it look like an accident, Linnea said. Present-day Linnea stood abruptly. That recording is fake, fabricated, inadmissible. FBI Forensic Lab verified audio authenticity, Friday, Agent Holbrook said. Metadata confirms November 14th, 2006 recording date. Voice analysis matches both subjects with 97% certainty. Federal Rules of Evidence 901 authenticated. Theodore clicked to the next file on the laptop. Orville Weaver's notarized testimony. Treating Jane Doe, November 15th, 2006. Temple wound consistent with vehicular assault. Patient refused hospital transfer, paid cash, disappeared after treatment. Next file, Laverne Riddle's email to Linnea. Subject line, digoxin consultation. Body text, discussing therapeutic versus toxic levels. Dated November 2006. Chain complete. Oregon Revised Statute 432.993. Leland Finch said quietly, felony falsification of vital records. Laverne Riddle's email establishes conspiracy. Lloyd's voice was desperate. I want immunity. I'll testify. This was all Linnea's plan. I was just following instructions. Agent Holbrook removed 2 arrest warrants from her manila folder, Place them on the conference table. Linnea Blanchard Lloyd Ashford. Arrest warrants issued by U.S. District Court District of Oregon. Charges include conspiracy to commit murder, a federal charge under 18 U.S.C. 1117 applicable because the conspiracy crossed state lines between Oregon and Washington, along with wire fraud and falsification of federal documents under 18 U.S.C. 1001. Lloyd turned to Linnea. You said she'd never come back. You said the death certificate was permanent. As it became Midland Stainham works. Linnea screamed at him. You drove the car. You're the one who tried to kill her. It's her. Lloyd lunged toward Linnea. She masterminded everything. Linnea lunged back. Nails raked Lloyd's face. They grappled in front of the FBI agent's professional veneer, shattered. 18 years of alliance. 18 years of conspiracy. Collapsing into animal desperation. You promised me half, Lloyd shouted, hands on Linnea's shoulders. Then I found your Delaware accounts you were stealing from me, too. Linnea's voice broke. Everyone takes from me Raymond's first wife, that girl. Everyone. Agent Holbrook signaled. 2 agents stepped forward with handcuffs. Separate and secure them. The agents pulled Lloyd and Linnea apart, handcuffed them separately, read Miranda rights in calm procedural voices. I watched from my conference table seat. Hadn't moved since the door burst open. Hadn't stood. Hadn't spoken. Just watched justice arrive, according to due process. Romilly stood beside me, hand resting on my shoulder. My first wife built the fortress. My daughter survived 18 years in hiding. Theodore gathered the evidence. FBI delivered the warrants. I just had to wait. Wait for the systems to work. Wait for truth to surface. Wait for the people who destroyed my family to destroy each other. Agent Holbrook looked across the conference room at me, nodded slightly. No words needed. Justice delivered. Mr. Perry, she said, we'll need your formal statement this afternoon, but for now, justice according to due process. FBI agents escorted Lloyd and Linnea toward the door, both still shouting, both blaming the other, both handcuffed, both arrested. The conference room door closed behind them. Romilly's hand squeezed my shoulder gently. It's over, Dad. I looked up at my daughter, 36 years old, temple scar visible, red garnet necklace back around her throat where it belonged. Alive. The legal victory was complete, the conspiracy exposed, the murderers arrested. But 18 years of separation sat between us, 18 years of questions, 18 years of her living as Jane Doe, while I mourned her as dead. It's over. Except it's not. Now we have to figure out how to be father and daughter again. 3 months after my wife and her lawyer were arrested in my conference room, I sat on a federal courthouse bench beside the daughter I'd mourned for 18 years and waited to hear how many years they'd spend in prison. January morning light came through tall courthouse windows, cold, clean, nothing like the December rain that had been falling when Theodore walked into FBI headquarters with evidence. Romilly sat to my left wearing charcoal suit similar to the one she'd worn in the conference room. I had manila folders in my lap, verdicts, plea agreements, sentencing recommendations. December 23rd felt like justice. Today feels like paperwork. That's how the system works. Catharsis first, process after. You don't have to stay for the sentencing, Romilly said quietly. Theodore can handle it. I looked at her. I stayed for 18 years thinking you were dead. I can stay for 90 minutes to watch them sentenced. Theodore Madden approached carrying coffee in a cardboard tray, sat beside me on the wooden bench, set his briefcase between his feet, opened it, removed a summary document. Thought you'd want the timeline reviewed before we go in, he said. I nodded. Theodore opened the document. Legal weight paper, federal court letterhead. December 23rd, arrests at Perry Freight Conference Room. December 28th, grand jury indictment conspiracy to commit murder, wire fraud, obstruction of justice. Lloyd Ashford never made that Lisbon flight. He was in Multnomah County holding instead. 5 days. Lloyd's perfect escape plan missed by 5 days. How did the trial go? I asked. I didn't attend most of it. Linnea went to trial, Theodore said. Lloyd took a plea deal. Both outcomes are sufficient. Sufficient. That's the word for it. Not satisfying, not vindicating, sufficient. Theodore turned pages. Linnea Blanchard convicted January 14th after 8-day trial. Attempted murder of Romilly Perry. Wire fraud, 18 counts, obstruction of justice. Sentence 35. Years federal prison, no parole eligibility restitution, $4.2 million to Perry Estate. Romilly's voice had no emotion in it. How old will she be when she's released? Theodore did the math. 91, if she lives that long. 35 years. Linnea was 56 now. She'd be 91 when she walked free. If she walked free. Federal prison has no parole. Time served is time sentenced. Yari Lloyd Ashford. Theodore continued, pleaded guilty January 9th under cooperation agreement. Attempted murder, 1-count conspiracy to commit fraud obstruction. Sentence 22 years. Federal prison, no parole, full disclosure of Delaware. LLC accounts and offshore transfers disbarment from Oregon State Bar. Leland Finch joined our group. He'd been reviewing documents with the prosecutor. Lloyd's cooperation agreement disclosed $8.7 million in Delaware accounts, Leland said. Assets frozen December 30th. Recovery proceedings underway. I looked at the summary document. 22 years. He'll be 79 when he's released. He testified against Linnea in exchange for the plea, Theodore said. Said she ordered the hit, he was just following instructions. Threw her under the bus to save 13 years. Even in sentencing, the betrayal persisted. I looked at the legal summary pages Theodore had prepared. 70 pages, 3 months of depositions, forensic reports, witness testimony, plea negotiations. The FBI conference room moment felt like justice. Instant, dramatic. Door bursting open, handcuffs, Miranda rights. This feels like accounting. Both are necessary. I thought justice would feel like vindication. Instead, it feels like closing a ledger. 18 years of theft documented in spreadsheets. 3 months of legal proceedings compressed into verdict summaries. Romilly sat through every day of Linnea's trial. I asked her why. She said, I want to watch her realize she's not getting out. I attended the first day and the verdict day. The middle felt like procedure I didn't need to witness. The system worked, I said to Theodore. Slowly, but it worked. Theodore nodded. Federal prosecution has a 93% conviction rate. Once FBI authenticated the evidence, the outcome was statistically inevitable. Statistically inevitable. That's what justice is. Math applied to crime. Theodore turned another page. Final verdict, Laverne Riddle, former Douglas County medical examiner. Convicted January 11th. Bribery under 18 U.S.C. Section 201, falsification of vital records obstruction. Sentence 8 years. Federal prison, $200,000, restitution forfeiture of state pension. Laverne Riddle took the stand in Linnea's trial, Theodore added. Admitted falsifying Romilly's death certificate for $50,000 payment from Linnea in 2006. Romilly spoke quietly. $50,000. That's what my death certificate cost. I looked at her. 8 years seems short. Cooperation reduced her sentence, Theodore said. She provided documentation of the digoxin consultation emails. Without her testimony, connecting Linnea to the conspiracy would have been harder. Short, but sufficient. Leland opened his own briefcase, removed estate documents. The Delaware accounts Lloyd hid for 3 years all recovered. $8.7 million traced and seized. Funds transferring to Perry Legacy Trust, established under your first wife's original will provisions. Romilly named sole beneficiary you as trustee until her 45th birthday per ORS 130.185. I looked at Romilly. So, Linnea stole from me, Lloyd stole from Linnea, and now it returns to you. Full circle. Mom planned for this, Romilly said. Every contingency, like she knew. She did know. 3 months between diagnosis and death, and she built a legal fortress that held for 18 years. Theodore closed his summary document, then paused. There's one more matter, he said carefully. Douglas County DA is investigating your first wife's death. Laverne mentioned consulting on digoxin levels in 2006 before your wife died in 2007. I went still. You're saying Linnea poisoned my first wife too? Theodore met my eyes. Court-ordered exhumation last week. Toxicology results in 60 days. If digoxin levels are elevated beyond therapeutic range, separate murder trial. Romilly's hand found mine on the bench. Squeezed. 19 years. If Linnea poisoned my first wife in 2007, she'd been planning this for 19 years, not 18. My first wife didn't just die of cancer. She died of cancer while being poisoned by the woman I trusted to care for her. The courtroom doors opened. Bailiff stepped into the hallway. United States versus Blanchard sentencing hearing. All parties. Romilly started to stand, paused. We can skip the hearing. We already know the sentences. I stood. No, I want to be there when the judge says the number out loud. I want to watch Linnea hear it. We walked toward the courtroom doors. Theodore and Leland followed. I looked at Romilly beside me. My daughter, 36 years old, stranger and family at once. Justice isn't beautiful like movies, I said quietly. It's slow, imperfect. You just feel enough. Sometimes enough is all you can ask. Romilly nodded. We entered the courtroom. Enough would have to be enough. 1 week after Linnea's sentencing, I drove my daughter 3 hours to Yakima County so she could face the man who saved her life and then abandoned her for 18 years. And I knew I wouldn't say a word when we got there. Rental Seddon, Highway 97, north through Oregon into Washington. Late January morning, sky gray and low. Romilly sat passenger seat. Neither of us spoke much. She'd asked for this trip yesterday. I agreed without questions. After an hour of silence, she said, "You don't have to come inside. You can wait in the car." "I'll wait on the porch," I said. "This is between you and him." She looked out the window at passing farmland. "He saved my life. Then he drove away and let me figure out 18 years alone. I need to tell him both those things." I nodded, kept driving. The gravel road appeared exactly where Romilly said it would. She'd been here before. Recently, I realized she'd scouted this location before asking me to drive her. Farmhouse ahead, single story, white paint weathered gray. Orville Weaver stood on the front porch, hands in jacket pockets, waiting. He knew we'd come eventually. I parked, turned off the engine. Orville looked older than 63, looked like a man who'd been waiting 18 years for this conversation and wasn't sure he'd survive it. Romilly opened her door immediately, didn't hesitate. "Mr. Weaver," she said. Orville's voice was rough. "You came." Romilly walked across the gravel yard toward the porch. I stayed by the car, leaned against the hood. Orville didn't move, watched Romilly approach. She stopped at the bottom of the porch steps, 3 feet from him, looking up. "I remember your face," she said. "You were the first person I saw when I woke up November 15th, 2006. Orville's voice started to break. "I shouldn't have left you. Let me say what I came to say." Silence. Romilly's voice was steady. No accusation, just facts. "You saved me. You treated my head wound, didn't report me. Gave me cash and clothes. You gave an 18-year-old girl bleeding in a wrecked car a chance to survive. You were also scared. You left me alone in a motel room afterward with $200 and no guidance. Both are true. I haven't forgotten the first." Orville stared at her, couldn't speak. "I was a coward," he whispered. "You were human," Romilly said. "You gave me a chance. That's what I'm thanking you for." I watched from 50 feet away, leaned against the car hood, didn't approach, didn't intervene. Reconciliations belong to 2 people. I learned that from my first wife. Some forgiveness can't be witnessed, only given. Romilly doesn't need me to validate her forgiveness. She spent 18 years learning to survive alone. She knows how to close this herself. Orville was crying now. Sitting on the porch steps, hands covering his face. Romilly stood above him, didn't touch him, just present. My wife would have understood this. Forgiveness doesn't erase harm. It just stops the harm from erasing you. Orville slumped forward, unable to support himself. 18 years of guilt released in one conversation. Romilly sat beside him on the steps, not touching, just near. They talked quietly for 10 minutes. I couldn't hear the words, didn't need to. Conversation ended. Romilly stood, walked back to the car. "We can go now," she said. "You okay?" She opened the passenger door. "I needed to tell him he saved me. Now he knows. That's enough." We drove back to Portland in silence. 2 weeks after the verdict, I stood in the Perry Freight conference room before 12 longtime drivers. Same oak table where I'd trapped Linnea and Lloyd. Same room, different purpose. Transferred documents stacked in front of me. Drivers seated around the table. Ages 34 to 61. Seniority 8 to 28 years. I'd asked them here Friday afternoon. Told them we were discussing the company's future. "I'm 63, I said. "I have no interest in running Perry Freight anymore." One driver spoke up anxious. "You selling to a corporation, one of the national carriers?" "No," I said. "I want to sell this company to you. Price $1 each." Silence. Then 12 voices talking at once. I raised my hand. Room quieted. "Employee Ownership Trust, under ERISA. Section 1102. I said. 38 vehicles. Portland Depot. Federal contracts with USPS and Army Corps of Engineers. Appraised value $22 million. Belongs to the people who drove those routes for 20 years. Vernon Clark stood slowly. 61 years old, hired 1997 by my first wife, 28 years. Seniority senior driver, who trained half the people in this room. You're giving us the company. Selling, I corrected. For $12 total. One condition, keep the name Perry Freight. My first wife's family built this. I want it driven by drivers, not managed by desk people. Vernon walked to me, extended his hand, said nothing. Handshake lasted 5 seconds. Other drivers stood one by one. I signed the transfer documents. Leland had prepared them 2 weeks ago when I told him what I wanted to do. Vernon spoke quietly after the handshake. Your wife hired me in '97, said Perry Freight takes care of drivers, not shareholders. We'll keep it that way. I looked around the table. 12 drivers, 28 years average seniority. They knew every route, every depot, every federal contract. They built this more than I did. My first wife hired half of them. She knew what Perry Freight was supposed to be, not a corporation extracting profit, a company that paid drivers well and delivered freight reliably. Driver-owned, driver-operated. That's what she wanted. Perry Freight name continues on Oregon highways, I said to the room. Now belongs to drivers, not desk people. That's right. The drivers signed their portions of the transfer agreement, $1 each, $12 total for a company appraised at $22 million. Leland notarized the signatures, filed the paperwork with Oregon Secretary of State that afternoon. By Monday morning, Perry Freight LLC would be employee-owned under federal ERISA trust provisions. I walked out of that conference room for the last time. Didn't look back. Legal justice delivered. Linnea and Lloyd sentenced. Personal forgiveness given. Romilly and Orville reconciled. Business legacy transferred. Perry Freight employee-owned. 3 months since December 23rd. 3 months since my daughter walked into that conference room alive. One question remained unanswered through all of it. Why did Romilly stay hidden 18 years when she could have contacted me sooner? What was she protecting me from? Or what was she waiting for? I didn't know. But I was about to ask. I kept one truck when I sold Perry Freight to the drivers, the 1994 18-wheeler. I bought the year my first wife died, and 3 weeks after justice was delivered, I loaded it with my daughter's belongings and mine, heading toward a home neither of us had lived in before. Perry Freight Depot. January morning, final boxes stacked in the cab. This truck was excluded from the employee ownership transfer. I'd requested to keep it specifically. First truck I ever bought after my first wife passed. Paid cash. 31 years of Oregon highways logged in this cab. Romilly watched me load the last box. Why this one? Why not sell it with the others? I secured the tie-down. This is the truck I drove the night I thought you died. Seemed right to drive it the day we start over. She nodded. Understood. Romilly climbed into the passenger seat. Small duffel bag at her feet. Everything she owned fit in one bag after 18 years as Jane Doe. I settled into the driver's seat. Worn leather shaped to my body after 3 decades. Engine started with a deep rumble. 987,000 miles, and still running. How many miles on this truck? Romilly asked, looking around the cab. 987,000. Never missed a delivery. She was quiet for a moment. Then, where are we going exactly? I pulled out of the depot. Last time I'd drive away from Perry Freight as owner. Tualatin Valley, I said. Small house. 2 bedrooms, acre of land. Bought it last week. Thought, if you wanted a place to stay while you figure out what's next. Romilly turned to look at me. You bought a house. For both of us, if you want, no pressure. I merged onto Highway 26 westbound. Late January, Oregon. Gray skies, green pines, hints of early spring in the air, despite the chill. Romilly rolled her window down. Wind filled the cab loud and cold. She didn't seem to mind. Let it blow her hair back, eyes half closed. I drove, both hands on the wheel. 10 minutes passed without words. Wind through the open window, engine rumble, road noise. Silence wasn't awkward. It was comfortable. We'd shared more silence than conversation in 3 weeks. That was okay. 18 years apart, we were learning each other again. No rush. Romilly broke the silence. I like this truck. Smells like old work, honest work. They've 31 years of deliveries, I said. Lumber steel freight, never carried anything as important as today. She smiled slightly, looked back out the window at passing pines. I drove and thought about the 15 years after my first wife died. I drove this truck alone, Portland to Bend, Seattle to Sacramento, Eugene to Spokane, never thinking about destination, only distance. Deliveries were excuses, movement was the goal, destination was just the reason to keep the wheels turning. After my first wife died, I drove to drive. Didn't matter where. Stopping meant feeling. Arriving meant acknowledging I had nowhere I wanted to be. Then Romilly disappeared, and I kept driving, because if I stopped moving, the grief would catch up. 18 years, Portland to everywhere, never caring where I ended up. Today I cared where we were going. That was new. I glanced at Romilly. The red garnet necklace was visible above her coat collar, same one I had commissioned for her 18th birthday, same one that held 18 years of evidence. She noticed my look, touched the pendant. "Your mother told me why she chose red garnet for that necklace," I said quietly. "Wanna know?" Romilly looked at me. "She gave this to me on my 16th birthday. Never explained the stone. She said red garnet is the color of someone who knows how to return home. She wanted you to have something that always reminds you home is still there, even if you can't see it." Romilly held the pendant, silent for 30 seconds, looked out the window at passing pines. When she spoke, her voice was quiet. "I wore this every day, 18 years. Couldn't explain why I never took it off, even when I had nothing else from before. Your mother knew you'd need to find your way back." Romilly's voice was barely audible over the wind. She knew I'd get lost, and she left me a map. I took the Tualatin Valley exit. Truck slowed. 15 years of deliveries alone. Destination never mattered. Only movement, only escape. Today someone sat in the passenger seat. Window down. Red garnet necklace visible against her coat. Wind in her hair. Destination mattered because arrival meant something now. I wasn't driving away from grief anymore. I was driving towards something. House with 2 bedrooms. Acre of land. Place for my daughter to figure out what comes next. Place for both of us to figure out what comes next. She was in the passenger seat. That meant destination mattered. I shifted gear hand on the stick. Romilly's hand moved across the seat. Touched mine. Didn't grasp, didn't hold. Just touched and remained. Contact without pressure, presence without demands. The truck drove through Oregon green pines toward Tualatin Valley. 2 people who'd spent 18 years apart. 2 people learning how to be father and daughter again. "Thank you," Romilly said, hands still touching mine. "For the house, for waiting, for not asking questions I'm not ready to answer yet." I kept my eyes on the road. "I've got time. We've got time." She looked ahead at the road opening before us. "Yeah, we do." The 18-year question sat unspoken between us. Why did she stay away? What was she protecting? What was she waiting for? I didn't ask. She wasn't ready. But someday she would be, and when that day came, I'd listen. For now, this was enough. Truck rolling west, hand touching hand. Destination ahead that mattered. Green pines, gray sky, red garnet catching light. Home wasn't a place we'd lived before. It was a place we were choosing to build together. 2 bedrooms, acre of land, Tualatin Valley. Someone in the passenger seat. That made all the difference. The sky finished turning dark while neither of us moved. Romilly came back from the railing and sat beside me, picked up her mug, took a long sip, like the coffee wasn't something that required courage to drink. Maybe for her it didn't. The meadow disappeared into the dark. Only the mountain silhouettes remained cut against a sky still holding the last purple edge of light. I'd driven past mountains my whole adult life. Portland to Bend, Bend to Medford. Thousands of passes, thousands of ridgelines in the windshield. Never once stopped long enough to watch one go dark. Yeah, I was watching one go dark now. "I owe you something," I said. Romilly looked at me sideways. "I never came looking hard enough," I said. "I hired investigators, filed reports, paid for 2 searches, but I stopped. 2010. I told myself you were gone. I signed the death declaration. I stopped." Romilly was quiet for a moment. Then, "You had a death certificate. You had a closed file. You had Linnea telling you to move forward. None of that was good enough reason." "No," she said. "It wasn't." She said it without cruelty. Just truth plain and level, the way her mother used to speak when she meant something and wanted you to hear it clearly. I sat with that. "I'm sorry," I said. "I know." She turned the mug slowly in her hands. I was angry about it for a long time. Somewhere around year 8, year 9. Wondering if the grief had just been easier than the search. The mountain edge went completely dark. Stars were beginning faint and scattered. Was it fair? I asked. What I'm asking, I want to know if it was fair to be angry. She thought about it. Genuinely thought about it the way she'd been doing since the cabin, working through things carefully, before she answered, never giving me the fast version. It was fair, she said, and it doesn't matter now. It matters to me. Then carry it lightly, she said. Don't carry it like freight. I almost laughed. A truck driver's daughter telling her truck driver father how to carry weight. Your mother would have said something exactly like that, I told her. Romilly smiled, not the small, polite smile from the first afternoon. The real one. The one that reached her eyes and stayed. She sounds like she was good at it, Romilly said. She was the best I ever knew, I said. We sat there, 2 chairs, 2 mugs going cold, stars coming in over the mountains one at a time. No deliveries, no manifests, no mileage to track. Just this. And for the first time in 18 years, this was exactly enough. And to you listening to my story, remember this. The people closest to you aren't always who they seem to be. I made the mistake of trusting without questioning. For 18 years, I drove those delivery routes, avoiding the pain instead of facing it. I saw the signs, the edited accident file, the strange financial requests, Theodore's suspicions, but I didn't want to believe the woman I married could betray me so deeply. Don't make my mistake. When something feels wrong, pay attention to that feeling. Family betrayal cuts deeper than any other wound because it comes from those you trust most. My wife didn't just betray me, she tried to murder my daughter and poison my first wife while pretending to share my grief. But here's what I learned. Justice may be slow, but it's thorough. The truth surfaces even after 18 years. I believe God's timing was perfect. Romilly stayed hidden until she could prove everything and protect us both. Family betrayal teaches you that blood and marriage don't guarantee loyalty, but real family shows up when it matters most. If this story made you think, leave a comment, have you experienced family betrayal? Your story might help someone else. If you know someone who needs this, please share it. And if you want more stories about justice and redemption, subscribe to Revenge Dad. I appreciate everyone who stays on this journey with me. Thank you for staying until the very end. As a reminder, some details in this story were fictionalized for storytelling purposes, but the lessons about trust, betrayal, and the importance of protecting those you love, those are real. Take care of yourself.